Chapter 3209. The power of heaven's punishment. Nye Tian went blank for a moment, and couldn't help but frown as a look of shock appeared on his face. Could the power of heaven's punishment that Ghost Emperor spoke of be related to the pain of heaven's punishment that Forefather Bing spoke of? However, Ghost Emperor went silent and didn't move for a long time. Nye Tian's eyes flickered as he turned to the patriarch of the Bing clan and asked, "Senior, can you explain yourself?" Forefather Bing nodded and said, "The Heaven Executioner is the gate of the Heaven's Punishment formation. They need to absorb an enormous amount of energy every day to support the formation's operation. During this process, the martial body of the Heaven Executioner has to endure extreme pressure. Every time the energy circulates, the Heaven's Punishment formation will produce a type of energy called Heaven's Punishment that accumulates inside the Heaven Executioner's body. The Heaven's Punishment formation is extremely powerful, and its aura is violent. It constantly oppresses the Heaven Executioner's body. Although this pressure won't kill the Heaven Executioner, it will make the Heaven Executioner feel extreme pain at every moment." As he spoke, Forefather Bing suddenly stretched out his arm, revealing his arm. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed in shock. Bloody wounds appeared on Forefather Bing's arm, but they healed over and over again. Such a scene was incomparably painful to watch. The Heaven's Punishment formation tore at the Heaven Executioner's body, and the Heaven's Punishment formation healed the Heaven Executioner's body. During this tearing and healing process, the Heaven Executioner was enduring unimaginable pain. If this pain was only for a short period of time, it would be bearable. But this pain persisted for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years. It was enough to drive someone crazy. Nye Tian frowned, and a grim expression appeared on his face. He didn't think that the price of being a Heaven Executioner would be this high. After a short while, Nye Tian calmed down and looked at the patriarch with a burning gaze. "Senior, why are you telling me this?" Vaguely, he had an ominous premonition. "Nye Tian, do you know why the ancestors of the Lu family and the Yuan family are so interested in you?" The ancestor of the Bing family asked with a strange expression. "The ancestor of the Lu family and the ancestor of the Yuan family are also Heaven Executioners?" Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he asked in surprise. Forefather Bing nodded. The look in his eyes was even weirder. "Don't tell me you think I can help you get rid of the pain of the heavenly punishment?" Nye Tian's eyes trembled. He immediately understood and asked in surprise. The three patriarchs were all heavenly executioners, so they had to endure the pain of the punishment. They were so persistent with Nye Tian that they didn't even hesitate to fall out with him. They must have felt that Nye Tian was helping them. "That's right." The ancestor of the Bing clan nodded and said, "Someone told us that your martial body is the rare Heaven Punishment body. It can withstand the power of Heaven Punishment." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed and his face instantly became gloomy. He had never heard of the Heaven Punishment body. It was too strange. But he could tell that the forefather of the Bing clan was using him as a vessel and wanted to transfer the power of the Heaven Punishment body to him. The power of the Heaven Punishment body was so terrifying that even an expert like the forefather of the Bing clan could not withstand it. How could Nye Tian withstand it? "My young friend Nye Tian, you must help me." The forefather of the Bing clan saw Nye Tian's panic. His face darkened and his eyes burned with passion. "Senior, I would like to ask, who told you that I have the Heaven Punishment body?" Nye Tian took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He asked in a low voice. No matter what, he had to calm the forefather of the Bing clan first. "Xiao." The forefather of the Bing clan hesitated. The corner of his mouth twitched as he said a name. Upon hearing this name, Nye Tian's pupils constricted as he exclaimed, "Him!" He had never thought that it would be Xiahou Yao who told the forefather of the Bing clan that he had the Heaven Punishment body. He had guessed correctly. It was all Xiahou Yao's doing. Xiahou Yao had sensed his arrival the moment he had set foot in the heaven punishment realm. However, he did not understand why Xiahou Yao would tell the three forefathers that he had the heaven punishment body. Wasn't this harming Nie Tian? No wonder Nie Tian had been targeted by the three heaven punishment families as soon as he had arrived in heaven punishment city. Senior, if my guess is correct, Senior Xiahou Yao is also a heaven executioner? Nie Tian calmed down and suddenly asked with a frown. Yes. The forefather of the Bing clan nodded, as if he knew what Nie Tian wanted to say. He said directly, but Xiahou Yao is an exception among the 5 heaven executioners. His martial body is not suppressed by the power of the heaven punishment body. According to him, he found a cultivator with the heaven punishment body. Every once in a while, he would transfer the power of the heaven punishment body to that cultivator. Nie Tian's expression froze when he heard the forefather of the Bing clan. He was speechless for a long time. This Xiahou Yao had really screwed him over. He was giving him to the forefather of the Bing clan as a vessel for the power of the heaven punishment body. My young friend Nie Tian, only you can save me in this world. The forefather of the Bing clan's eyes blazed as he said solemnly, "Don't worry, I won't transfer all the power of the heaven punishment body to you. You only need to help me endure half of it." Half? Nie Tian was taken aback, his expression extremely grim. Given his strength, how could he endure half the power of the heaven punishment body? Who knew how long the forefather of the Bing clan had been a heaven executioner? The power of the heaven punishment body he had accumulated in his body was unimaginably terrifying. Half the power of the heaven punishment body was enough to kill Nie Tian in an instant. "Senior, I really want to help you, but..." Nie Tian frowned and finally spoke. However, he was interrupted halfway by the Ghost Emperor. "Nie Tian, agree to it." The Ghost Emperor suddenly squealed, his eyes trembling with excitement. Nie Tian was taken aback and his face froze. The Ghost Emperor was asking him to agree to the forefather of the Bing clan. Wasn't this asking for death? Nie Tian, the power of the heaven punishment body is good stuff. The most terrifying power of the entire heaven punishment formation is the power of the heaven punishment body. This is the condensed essence of the heaven punishment formation's power. It's a type of extremely powerful sacred power. The Ghost Emperor said excitedly, his voice trembling with excitement. What? Nie Tian was taken aback once again. He had never imagined that the power of the heaven punishment body was a type of sacred power. But if the power of the heaven punishment body was sacred power, then why did the forefather of the Bing clan and the others have to endure the pain of the heaven punishment body every day? Nie Tian, the power of the heaven punishment body is extremely powerful. It's an extremely pure sacred power. But for ordinary cultivators, this kind of power cannot be absorbed. Instead, it will accumulate in the martial body and become a form of oppression, the Ghost Emperor continued. But you have the Star Origin Stone. Your martial body is filled with the power of the stars, so it's very easy for you to absorb and fuse with the power of the heaven punishment body, the Ghost Emperor said anxiously. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, as if he had understood something. So Xiahou Yao had asked the 3 forefathers to find him to give him the power of the heaven punishment body. To others, the power of the heaven punishment body was a form of oppression that would cause them to suffer the pain of the heaven punishment body. But to Nie Tian, the power of the heaven punishment body was an extremely powerful force that could be absorbed by the martial body. Nie Tian's eyes flashed with excitement when he realized this. Chapter 32:10. Body tempering. After hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nie Tian's gaze turned fiery, as his eyes flickered with a sharp glow. It turned out that the force of the heavenly punishment was extremely useful to him. Nie Tian, my friend, do you agree to help? Forefather Bing's eyes turned fiery as he asked excitedly after seeing the strange expression on Nie Tian's face. Nie Tian recovered his composure and said with a faint smile, "I'll try my best, Senior." "Thank you, Nie Tian." Forefather Bing's eyes widened after hearing Nie Tian's answer. He rose from his seat and bowed toward Nie Tian. "Senior, you're too kind." Nie Tian stood up and let out a calm smile. "Since that's the case, young friend Nie Tian, let's get started," the patriarch of the Bing clan said impatiently. He had been enduring the pain of the heavenly punishment all the time. Now that there was someone standing in front of him who could alleviate his pain, he could not wait any longer. "Sure." Nie Tian nodded with a smile. He too was looking forward to seeing how the force of the heavenly punishment would improve his martial physique. Following this, Forefather Bing and Nie Tian did not waste any time. They sat down with their legs crossed and began to transfer the force of the heavenly punishment. Forefather Bing took a deep breath as the 9 yuan meridians in his body began to circulate. Streams of the heavenly punishment became violent like ferocious beasts. Bang! 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 In the next instant, the wounds on Forefather Bing's body burst open, causing blood to pour out from his body, turning him into a man made of blood. However, he ignored it and continued to circulate his yuan meridians even more crazily, causing the heavenly punishment to become even more violent, as if the streams of force were trying to tear him apart. Following this, streams of heavenly punishment began to leak out from the pool of blood. "Nie Tian, my friend." At that instant, Forefather Bing let out a roar to remind Nie Tian. Nie Tian agreed. The yuan meridians in his body began to circulate, and the aura around him was released. At the same time, he released his blood qi and began to absorb the power of the heavenly punishment. At first, the power of heaven's punishment was a little repulsive. However, after a while, it began to flow into Nie Tian's body. It really is the Heaven Punisher physique. Bing family's old ancestor could feel the Heaven Punisher energy around him weakening. His heart shook as he exclaimed in joy. In his opinion, the fact that Nie Tian could absorb the power of the Heaven Punishment meant that he had the Heaven Punishment physique. If it was any other warrior, they would not be able to absorb the Heaven Punishment energy. The Heaven Punishment energy that leaked out would flow back into the Bing family's old ancestor's body. Following that, the transfer of the power of the Heaven Punishment slowly stabilized. Nie Tian could feel the power of Heaven's punishment rushing into his body like a ferocious beast, wreaking havoc. In an instant, his meridians and bones were impacted, as if they were about to shatter. However, in the next moment, the power of the stars began to take effect, slowly fusing the power of the heavenly punishment into his meridians and bones. As the power of the heavenly punishment slowly poured in, Nie Tian felt like his strength was about to explode. He could feel that his martial body was rapidly growing stronger, tempering the heavenly punishment physique. Just at this moment, the Ghost Emperor's excited voice rang out. "Nie Tian, your martial body will become even stronger." Nie Tian was excited, but his martial body remained stable. At this moment, he understood why Xiahou Yao, as the Heaven Punisher, did not suffer the pain of the heavenly punishment. A strong holy energy like the power of the heavenly punishment would suppress other cultivators. However, the power of the stars could fuse with this energy. Xiahou Yao was a star venerate, and his body was filled with the power of the stars. Of course, he could fuse with the power of the heavenly punishment. As for the so-called Heaven Punishment physique, that was probably just something Xiahou Yao said to scare people. Half a day later, beads of sweat the size of beans started to appear on Nie Tian's forehead. Even if the power of the stars could be fused with the power of the heavenly punishment, Nie Tian's strength was limited, and he could not withstand too much of the power of the heavenly punishment at one time. However, the power of the heavenly punishment that he absorbed was only directly fused with a very small portion. Most of the power was stored in the sacred spirit blood seal. Nie Tian, it's about time. Sensing that Nie Tian's martial body was about to reach its limit, the ghost emperor hurriedly reminded him. Senior. Nye Tian immediately called out, telling the Bing family's patriarch to stop releasing the power of the heavenly punishment. The Bing family's patriarch's eyes trembled slightly, and he did not hesitate to stop releasing the power of the heavenly punishment. A moment later, both Nye Tian and the Bing family's patriarch exhaled at the same time. Their faces regained some color, and they stood up. My young friend Nye Tian, are you all right? The Bing family's patriarch looked at Nye Tian with an unconcealable smile. It was obvious that Nye Tian had helped him withstand a lot of the power of the heavenly punishment. I'm fine. Nye Tian nodded with a smile. His expression was slightly ugly, but his aura was stronger than before. At this moment, he was like a person who had eaten too much, and his martial body felt like it was about to explode. However, this feeling would not last for long, and would soon disappear. Thank you, my young friend Nye Tian. The power of the heavenly punishment in my body has weakened significantly. The Bing family's patriarch expressed his gratitude sincerely, and his expression was a little emotional. This was the first time in many years that he felt so relaxed. He had not expected Nye Tian to have withstood so much of the power of the heavenly punishment. Initially, he had only planned to let Nye Tian bear half of the power of the heavenly punishment. However, he had transferred 3/4 of the power of the heavenly punishment to Nye Tian. Following this, the Bing family's divine sense swept across Nye Tian's body, and his eyes narrowed as he exclaimed in shock, "How is this possible?" He suddenly realized that Nye Tian's current strength was already at the rank 4 pseudo-sacred realm. He clearly remembered that Nye Tian was at the rank 3 pseudo-sacred realm before this. Could it be that the power of the heavenly punishment did not suppress Nye Tian, and instead increased Nye Tian's strength? This was too strange. I have the heavenly punishment physique, so I must have merged with some of the power of the heavenly punishment. That's why I broke through. Nye Tian naturally knew why the Bing family's patriarch was so shocked. If the heavenly punishment physique can merge with the power of the heavenly punishment, that would be great. The Bing family's patriarch exclaimed in surprise. He was naturally happy that Nye Tian's strength had increased. This meant that he would be able to transfer all the power of the heavenly punishment in his body to Nye Tian in the near future. Nye Tian nodded and did not say anything else. At this moment, he had only merged with a small amount of the power of the heavenly punishment, and his strength had increased once again. More of the power of the heavenly punishment was stored in the sacred spirit blood seal. If he could completely merge with the power of the heavenly punishment in the blood seal, his strength would increase once again. But now, his strength was already extremely terrifying. The biggest benefit that the power of the heavenly punishment had brought him was not the breakthrough of his strength, but the improvement of his martial physique. The power of the heavenly punishment had merged with the power of the stars, making his martial physique even stronger. At this moment, Nye Tian felt like he was a monster. Even an ordinary rank 9 pseudo-sacred cultivator would not be as strong as his martial physique. No one would believe that a rank 4 pseudo-sacred cultivator's martial physique was stronger than a rank 9 pseudo-sacred cultivator. Young friend Nye Tian, something big happened in the heavenly punishment domain recently. Do you know about it? The Bing family's patriarch suddenly looked at Nye Tian and asked. Something big? Nye Tian was stunned and his face was filled with doubt. Chapter 32:11. Heaven and Earth Saint Meridian. Nye Tian frowned when he saw the mysterious expression on the Bing family's forefather's face. He was looking forward to it. With the status of the Bing family's patriarch, what could possibly make him so excited? The Bing family's forefather chuckled and said, "Rumor has it that the Tianqing territory floated here from a sacred realm in the Archaic era. It is said that there is a Heaven and Earth Saint Meridian in the Tianqing mountain range." Heaven and Earth Saint Meridian? Nye Tian asked, "What is that?" He knew about Earth veins and guessed that the Heaven and Earth Saint Meridian was something similar. However, he didn't think that the Tianqing territory was a part of the sacred realm in the Archaic era. The Tianqing territory was similar to the Abandoned Land, but the sacred realm in the Tianqing territory was too old and had completely degenerated into a territory. The Heaven and Earth Saint Meridian is an earth vein that stores a large amount of Heaven and Earth Saint energy. It is even more terrifying than a sacred seed. The Bing family's forefather suddenly lowered his voice and said, "It is said that the Heaven and Earth Saint Meridian also contains the power of the Heaven and Earth bloodline." The power of the Heaven and Earth bloodline? Nie Tian was stunned again. He knew about the power of bloodlines, but he had never heard of it. "Nie Tian, my young friend, you know about the power of bloodlines, right?" The Bing family's forefather saw Nie Tian's confusion and explained, "The power of a cultivator's bloodline is usually inherited through the bloodline. However, some bloodlines do not exist in the cultivator's body, but in the world itself. This kind of bloodline is the power of the Heaven and Earth bloodline." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he nodded. The so-called power of the Heaven and Earth bloodline was actually the Khanate bloodline. For example, some formations were created by humans, while others were nurtured by the world itself. Nie Tian had seen Khanate sacred formations before, but the power of the Heaven and Earth bloodline was extremely rare. To think that there would actually be a Heaven and Earth Saint vein in this realm. This is simply unbelievable. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice rang out as he exclaimed, "Is the Heaven and Earth Saint Meridian that powerful?" Nie Tian frowned and asked, "It's more than amazing." The Ghost Emperor laughed. "The sacred veins of Heaven and Earth are nurtured by the Heaven and Earth. Who knows how many years have passed before they can form? Even in the holy world, a Heaven and Earth Saint vein is extremely terrifying, let alone a realm. Without any exaggeration, if a sacred vein of Heaven and Earth appears in a sacred world, the entire sacred world will be alarmed." Hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nie Tian's eyes became hot and trembled. From the looks of it, this Heaven and Earth Saint vein did indeed contain an extremely terrifying power. "Ghost Emperor, can the power of the Heaven and Earth Saint veins unlock the Heaven and Earth Saint runes in the Saint Origin Blood Jade?" Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he thought of something. The Saint Essence Blood Jade was the reward he had received from the Heaven's Chosen Venerable during the Heaven's Chosen Path. The Saint Essence Blood Jade contained 9 Heaven and Earth Saint runes. Each Heaven and Earth Saint rune contained the power of a saint. However, unsealing the Heaven and Earth Saint runes required a lot of power. Nie Tian had already unsealed 3 Heaven and Earth Saint runes. There were still 6 Heaven and Earth Saint runes that he had yet to unseal. It would be great if he could use the power of the Heaven and Earth Saint vein to unseal the Heaven and Earth Saint runes. Of course. The Ghost Emperor laughed. Then, he narrowed his eyes and said, "However, something like the Heaven and Earth Saint vein won't appear so easily. Unless someone can attract the Heaven and Earth Saint light, the Heaven and Earth Saint vein won't appear." This. Nie Tian was stunned. He had no idea what the Ghost Emperor was talking about. Nie Tian, everything in the world has spirituality and can sense many things. Some things that are nurtured by the world will only appear when the time is right. The Ghost Emperor smiled faintly and did not say anything else. Nie Tian's face was blank. He did not understand what the Ghost Emperor was saying. However, he did understand one thing. For the Heaven and Earth Saint vein to appear, someone must attract the Heaven and Earth Saint light. However, he did not know how to attract the Heaven and Earth Saint light and what kind of person would be able to do so. Not long ago, the President sensed through the Heaven Amplifying Array that the Heaven and Earth Saint vein seemed to be moving. At this time, the Bing clan's ancestor looked at Nie Tian and continued, "At this time, The president has secretly arranged for many geniuses from the 10,000 Domains Guild to enter the Tianxing mountain range to find the heaven and earth Saint Vein. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He looked at the Bing clan's ancestor and waited for the latter to continue. It is said that only those with extraordinary talent can find the heaven and earth Saint Vein. Then, the Bing clan's ancestor looked at Nie Tian with a heated gaze. Nie Tian, my young friend, I feel that since you have the Tianxing body and can even withstand the power of the Tianxing force, it means that your talent is extraordinary. The Bing clan's ancestor's gaze became even more heated. Nie Tian, my young friend, perhaps you are the one who can find the heaven and earth Saint Vein. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. He couldn't help but laugh. This Bing clan's ancestor was quite confident in him. Nie Tian, my young friend, if you want to enter the Tianxing mountain range, I can help you. Seeing Nie Tian smile, the Bing clan's ancestor became excited. If Nie Tian is able to find the heaven and earth Saint Vein, it will be great news for the Tianxing territory, or even the 10,000 domains. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. A strange smile appeared on his face. After a while, he said, Senior, since I have nothing to do now, why don't I go to the Tianxing mountain range? Alright. Seeing that Nie Tian agreed, the patriarch of the Bing clan nodded heavily. He took out a medallion and handed it to Nie Tian, saying, This is the inner sect medallion of the Bing clan. It allows you to enter the Tianxing mountain range freely. Many thanks, Senior. Nie Tian took the command medallion and expressed his gratitude with a faint smile. Nie Tian, my young friend, you should rest in the ice house for a few days. In a few days, I will ask Hongye to arrange for you to enter the Tianxing mountain range. The Bing clan's ancestor smiled and said, There's no need. Nie Tian smiled and said, I'm going to the Tianxing mountain range now. You're going now? The Bing clan's ancestor was startled. He didn't understand why Nie Tian was in such a rush to leave. He was also worried that Nie Tian's martial body might not be able to handle it after enduring the Tianxing force. Senior, don't worry. I'm fine. Nie Tian smiled. His eyes flickered with determination. The Bing clan's ancestor didn't say anything else after seeing Nie Tian's determination. Nie Tian didn't stay any longer. Without Hongye's protection, he left the ice house. After leaving the ice house, he didn't go straight to the Tianxing mountain range. Instead, he took a detour around the Tianxing city. When they entered Tianxing city, Jean de Bao said that someone was following them. Nie Tian was worried that the people following them were still around. Then, Nie Tian left the Tianxing city and headed to the Tianxing mountain range. The Tianxing mountain range was a few hundred miles away from the Tianxing city. It didn't take long for Nie Tian to arrive. Chapter 32:12. Violent and Ruthless. When Nie Tian sensed the killing aura approaching, his figure turned sluggish. His lips curled up into a bitter smile as he said, You guys are really annoying. I can't shake you off no matter how hard I try. Before he left Heaven Execution City, he had taken a detour, but he still failed to shake off these people. Just as he finished speaking, several black-clad figures appeared in the void at the same time. Nie Tian, long time no see. Several black-clothed martial artists stared coldly at Nie Tian. The leader of the group had a murderous look in his eyes. The corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile as he spoke coldly. Huh! Nie Tian looked at the cultivator who spoke and frowned involuntarily. He did not recognize the cultivator before him. Not only did he look unfamiliar, but his aura was also extremely unfamiliar. Xiao Chen did not remember when he had met this person before. You don't remember me? That cultivator smiled cold and said, Then you definitely remember my other name, Felicitous Rain. Upon hearing this name, Nie Tian's eyes couldn't help but tremble as he exclaimed, It's you! Of course he remembered Felicitous Rain. He was the assassin who devoured souls during the Heavens Selection competition. At that time, Felicitous Rain had appeared as a dark horse and had nearly killed Yulua. At that time, Nyetian had been very puzzled. Felicitous Rain had actually dared to kill the Rakshasa holy daughter in front of 3 Rakshasa kings. Later on, the Ghost Emperor could tell that Felicitous Rain was a cultivator who cultivated one soul with 2 bodies. The so-called one soul with 2 bodies referred to a cultivator's soul splitting into 2, occupying 2 martial bodies at the same time. Felicitous Rain was only a soul body. Hence, he had disregarded everything to kill Yulua. Nyetian had fought with Felicitous Rain and killed him, but Felicitous Rain's soul had managed to escape. At that time, the Ghost Emperor had said that Nyetian might have provoked a troublesome opponent. Sure enough, this troublesome matter appeared. It was impossible for Felicitous Rain to find Nyetian alone. Hence, there had to be a huge faction behind him. To be able to quickly find a person in 10,000 realms, such a force was extremely rare. And the number 1 assassin organization in the Myriad domain, Evernight, was such a force. See you, if I am not mistaken, you are a member of Night, am I right? Nie Tianling chuckled coldly as he voiced his speculation. Nie Tian, you are indeed very smart. The corner of Shigur's mouth twitched as he smiled coldly and said, "It's just a pity that smart people usually don't live long." Really? Nie Tian laughed. His face was filled with disdain. He glanced at Guiyu and the others and said, "You want to kill me with just a few ants? You may not know this, but your great elder Dugu has already died by my hands." What? Shi Yu's eyes trembled when he heard Nie Tian's words. He exclaimed in shock, "Elder Solitary is dead. Are you surprised?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "Him running to the 9 regions to kill me is his biggest mistake." Shi Yu's eyes trembled with murderous intent. He did not expect that Dugu Kan had already died at the hands of Nie Tian. Dugu Kan was one of the 4 great elders of night. Nie Tian, you shouldn't have left the 9 regions. At this time, Shigur calmed down, and killing intent surged from all over his body. He growled, "Walking out of the 9 regions is your greatest mistake." He believed that the reason Nie Tian was able to kill Dugu Kan was because Dugu Kan was suppressed by the 9 regions, special spacetime. But now, Nie Tian was in the Tianxing territory. Without any geographical advantage, he would definitely die. "Then make your move." Nie Tian did not waste time and said directly. Although Shigur was indeed a powerful opponent, Nie Tian did not take him seriously at all. Shi Yu currently had the strength of an 8th-order pseudosage, and the martialists around him were 6th-order pseudosage. As for Nie Tian, he was a 4th-order pseudosage. With such a difference in strength, other 4th-order pseudosages would be in a hopeless situation. But for Nie Tian, there was no pressure at all. It was not an exaggeration to say that Nie Tian's current strength was enough to take on a weaker 9th-order pseudosage. "You're courting death." Shigur's eyes trembled as he let out a low roar. He could no longer control the killing intent in his body as he roared out, "Let me deal with this ant." At this moment, one of the black-clothed martial artists let out a fierce roar and directly moved. His whole body released a violent aura, and like a wild beast, he madly charged towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian felt the powerful aura coming at him, but the corner of his mouth twitched. Starlight Heaven Slash appeared in his hand, and he stabbed it out. Boom! The moment the sword shadow swept through the air, the void trembled, and the world became solemn. In the next moment, blood appeared in the air, and that martialist died without a corpse. The horrifying scene caused the others' eyes to tremble. They were extremely shocked. How could they have ever imagined that Nie Tian was actually so powerful? Shigur's eyebrows furrowed, and his expression grew grim. Then, he laughed coldly and said, "Nie Tian, you're much stronger than you were during the Heaven's Choice competition. However, it's a pity that your opponent is me. You're dead meat today." "Do it." Shi Yu let out a roar, and his eyes were filled with a cold, murderous intent. Boom! 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 As soon as he finished speaking, the three black-robed martial artists beside him moved at the same time. Like three arrows that had been shot from a bow, they shot towards Nye Tian with murderous intent. Die! Nye Tian's lips twitched and he let out a low roar. A violent sword intent burst out from his body, and he soared into the sky like a sharp sword. At this moment, the sword will in his body was extremely violent, surging outside his body like a storm. Bang! 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 Nye Tian's figure was like a bolt of lightning as he charged forward, and forcefully broke through the aura of the three martialists. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the next instant, wherever Nye Tian's figure passed, blood splattered everywhere. He had torn three martialists in black to pieces. This! Shi Yu's expression changed drastically after seeing this, and his expression was filled with extreme shock. He could not believe what he had just seen. Nye Tian was like a ferocious beast, ferocious and violent. Shi Yu, leave your last words. Meanwhile, Nye Tian's figure had already charged forward. The wings on his back vibrated, and his speed was extremely fast. He had already noticed that Shi Yu was planning to use the same trick and activate the Yellow Springs blood rain. However, he would not give his opponent the chance to do so. Shi Yu's soul was much stronger than when he fought for the Heaven's Choice Peak. Unfortunately, Nye Tian's speed of growth was much faster than Shi Yu's. Shi Yu's eyes widened when he saw Nye Tian charging at him like a wild beast, and he was extremely shocked. He wanted to say something, but he did not have the chance and could only utter one word. Whoosh! In the next instant, a tearing sound was heard in the air, and a bloody light appeared. Before Shigeru could do anything, he died a horrible death. However, the way he died was extremely tragic. He had been torn to shreds by Nye Tian. Nye Tian's figure stabilized in midair, and he immediately sensed an aura. He could not help but squint his eyes and look into the sky. High up in the sky, a figure in purple stood there, staring at Nye Tian. He was completely dumbfounded. Chapter 32:13. Being abandoned. Nye Tian looked up at the woman in purple in the sky. He couldn't help but frown. His expression changed slightly. The woman in purple looked very young, but her strength was terrifying. She had actually reached the level of a first-level pseudo-sage. Nye Tian also sensed a strange and familiar aura from her body. He had sensed such an aura before, but he couldn't remember where. The woman in purple was also looking at Nye Tian. Her delicate face was blank, as if she had been scared silly. She had never thought that pseudo-sage martialists could fight like this. The scene in front of her was simply too bloody and unbelievable. At this moment, Nye Tian had calmed down a lot. He frowned slightly and called out, "Miss Yu." "Ah!" But as soon as he opened his mouth, the girl in purple suddenly screamed. Her figure moved at an extremely fast speed. Like a stream of light, she flew towards the Tianxing mountain range and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Nye Tian went blank for a moment before exclaiming inwardly. The girl in purple's speed was too fast. It had exceeded his expectations. Even if he used his astral soul wings to the limit, he still wouldn't be able to reach that speed. He could vaguely see the shadow of a pair of white wings appear on the girl's body and disappear in a flash. Where did I sense this aura before? Nye Tian frowned. He thought for a long time but still couldn't remember. In the end, he gave up. After a while, he calmed down and began to think about Dark Knight. He didn't know if he had really killed Shi Yu, but he and Dark Knight were absolutely irreconcilable enemies. He had killed the great elder of Dark Knight. Dugukan Dark Knight had also accepted a mission from Juying Temple. Therefore, no matter what, Dark Knight would not let Nye Tian off. Compared to Juying Temple, Dark Knight was a more troublesome problem. After all, Juying Temple's pursuit of Nye Tian was limited. But Dark Knight was the largest assassin organization. Their assassins were spread across tens of thousands of domains. It would be too difficult for Nye Tian to hide his track. But now, Nye Tian didn't have a good solution. He could only take it one step at a time. For him, the most important thing now was to improve his strength. As long as he was strong enough, he wouldn't be afraid even if the Master of the Night came personally. Then, Nye Tian did not stay any longer. He began to walk toward the Tianxing mountain range. Arriving outside the mountain range, he was stopped by two black-clothed martial artists. He flashed the Bing family's inner sect token in his hand before he was allowed to enter. Since there were heaven and earth saint veins in the Tianxing mountain range, they couldn't just let anyone in. After Nye Tian entered the Tianxing mountain range, he discovered that there were quite a lot of people inside. Furthermore, most of them were young warriors below the age of 100,000 years old. Most of these warriors were in groups. Small groups had 5 or 6 people, while larger groups had more than 10 people. Nye Tian, if there really is a heaven and earth saint vein in the Tianxing mountain range, then it must be in the center of the entire mountain range. Don't waste time, just go straight to the center of the mountain range, the Ghost Emperor said in a deep voice. All right. Nye Tian agreed and prepared to go straight into the depths of the Tianxing mountain range. Brother, please wait a moment. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Then, a warrior in green walked over with a smile on his face. He looked very enthusiastic and said, "You are alone, right? Do you want to team up with us?" Team up? Nye Tian was stunned. Then, he saw a few dozen warriors behind the warrior in green. There were both men and women, and they were all pretty strong. Brother, we are from the Yunyang branch. From your appearance, it seems that this is your first time coming to the Tianxing mountain range. Why don't you come with us? We can take care of each other. The warrior in green did not wait for Nye Tian to speak and laughed. That's fine. Nye Tian thought for a moment and nodded with a smile. This warrior in green looked like he was easy to get along with. He should be a good companion. That's great. When the warrior in green saw that Nye Tian had agreed, he could not help but laugh out loud. He said happily, "My name is Shang Lai. How should I address you, brother?" Nye Tian. Nye Tian smiled faintly and nodded. Big brother, you are looking for people randomly again. Why don't you take a look at how many people we have in our team? At this moment, a somewhat sharp voice sounded. It was extremely unfriendly. Nye Tian took a look. The one who spoke was a girl in green. Her facial features were exquisite and her figure was fiery. Under her green dress, a pair of alluring long legs could be faintly seen. However, at this moment, this girl looked at Nye Tian with an unfriendly gaze. There was a hint of disdain in her eyes. Little sister, don't talk nonsense. Brother Nye Tian is not an outsider. Anyway, we already have so many people in our team. It doesn't matter if we add him. Shang Lai turned around and said to the girl. Then, he chuckled and said to Nye Tian, "Brother Nye Tian, this is my little sister, Shang Nana. Don't lower yourself to her level." Nye Tian smiled faintly and did not say anything else. It was obvious that Shang Nana felt that Nye Tian was too weak and would be a burden to them. However, Shang Lai's team was indeed a little too big. Furthermore, the strength of the entire team was not too strong. Most of them were 3rd-grade pseudo-sages, 4th-grade pseudo-sages, and a few 6th-grade pseudo-sages. At this moment, the slightly stronger martialists were looking at Nye Tian with obvious disgust. "Brother Shang, you mentioned earlier that you are from the Yunyang branch. Is that right?" Nye Tian asked Shang Lai, who did not seem to care. "Yes." Shang Lai nodded and said with a smile, "I don't know what happened, but the president suddenly ordered all the branches to send young genius martialists to the Tianxing realm. If not for this, my little sister and I would not have had the chance to come here." When Nye Tian heard Shang Lai's words, his eyes narrowed slightly as he understood what was going on. It seemed like the president of the Myriad Domain Guild had mobilized all the genius martialists of the Myriad Domain Guild to the Tianxing mountain range in order to find the heaven and earth sacred meridians. Actually, in Nye Tian's opinion, Shang Lai and the others were not considered true geniuses. Although Shang Lai was not old, he was still tens of thousands of years old. However, his strength was only at the 6th grade pseudo-sage. He was still far from the genius in Nye Tian's eyes. As for the others, it seemed like only a 7th grade pseudo-sage martialist could barely catch Nye Tian's eye. Nye Tian's standards were so high not because he was arrogant, but because he had seen too many true geniuses. In Nye Tian's opinion, the president of the Myriad Domain Guild letting so many martialists enter the Tianqing mountain range at the same time was not a good thing. Although these martialists were all members of the Myriad Domain Guild, they were martialists from different domains. It was inevitable that there would be friction between them. If these martialists were to fight amongst themselves, it would not be good. Brother Shang, did your Yunyang branch send so many martialists this time? Nye Tian asked casually with a faint smile. He realized that the other martialists did not seem to recognize the Shang siblings, which was why he asked this question. Chapter 32:14. White Knight Evil Spirit. Brother Nye Tian, our Yunyang branch is only a bronze-level branch. We can only send 2 warriors to the Tianqing territory at most. Shang Lai looked at Nye Tian and pointed to the people behind him. I don't know these brothers. They are from other branches. Nye Tian smiled faintly and nodded. I see. Shang Lai's words revealed a lot of information. Nye Tian didn't know that the Myriad Domain Guild's branches were divided into different levels. Different levels of branches would send different numbers of warriors. The Yunyang branch that the Shang siblings were at was obviously not a high level and could only send 2 warriors. However, this Shang Lai was a little interesting. Originally, there were only the 2 of them, but he managed to expand the team to dozens of people. However, Shang Lai was obviously not wary of outsiders and wanted to pull in anyone. Nye Tian had long noticed that a few warriors were looking at Shang Nana with unusual gazes. It was almost as if there was a lustful glint in their eyes. But even so, the Shang siblings didn't notice. "Oh right, Brother Nye Tian, which branch are you from?" Shang Lai suddenly asked. 9 Extreme Branch. Nye Tian was stunned for a moment and then said casually. 9 Extreme Branch? Shang Lai frowned and said in surprise, Is there such a branch? Nye Tian's face stiffened and he smiled awkwardly. Big brother, our Myriad Domain Guild has at least 8,000 branches, if not 10,000. Can you even remember those miscellaneous small branches? At that moment, Shang Nana took a sideways glance at Nye Tian and said in a loud voice, Some people must be from some low-level branch. That's why they're all by themselves. They don't even have a companion. Humph. After saying that, Shang Nana raised her head and raised her snow-white chin like a proud swan. Her eyes swept over Nye Tian unintentionally, looking even more contemptuous. Looks like I'm being looked down upon. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. His expression didn't change much, but he laughed bitterly in his heart. Of course, he knew that Shang Nana was referring to him. However, he didn't care too much about it. After all, he was just traveling with Shang Lai and the others. What others thought of him was their business. However, Shang Lai's expression was not happy. He glared at Shang Nana and said fiercely, Little sister, don't talk so much. Shang Nana was even more unhappy and retorted, You have no background, your strength is trash, and you don't even allow people to talk about you. Little sister, that's enough. Shang Lai's face darkened as he said coldly. Humph. If you don't want to say it, then I won't. Shang Nana saw that Shang Lai was really going to get angry, so she angrily turned around and left. Brother Nye Tian, my little sister is just a little too straightforward. Don't lower yourself to her level. Shang Lai ignored her and turned to smile apologetically at Nye Tian. The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. He noticed that Shang Nana had gone to the side of a man in white. She glanced at him from time to time and laughed with the man in white. Nye Tian had already noticed that man in white. He was the strongest in Shang Lai's team, a pseudo-sage at the 6th level. Moreover, the way he looked at Shang Nana was the most abnormal. His triangular eyes were filled with lust, and he kept staring at Shang Nana's thighs. However, Shang Lai was so crazy that he didn't even notice this. The way the man in white looked at Nye Tian was also abnormal. There was a murderous look in his eyes. Brother Shang, who is that man in white? He seems to be quite strong? Nye Tian asked in a low voice as he walked. Oh, you mean Brother Hua? Shang Lai was stunned for a moment before he laughed and said, His name is Hua Qingdong. He is the strongest among us. He is a pseudo-sage at the 7th level. Moreover, he is from the Gold Branch, the Black Firmament Branch. I heard that his father is the president of the Black Firmament Branch, and he is the young master of the Black Firmament Branch. Look at the people around him. They are all from the Black Firmament Branch. After saying that, Shang Lai greeted Hua Qingdong. The latter nodded with a smile, but his eyes inadvertently glanced at Nye Tian with a sharp, killing intent. Nye Tian frowned and was speechless. He had secretly asked about Hua Qingdong, but who knew that Shang Lai would say it out loud? But it was nothing. He didn't care about Hua Qingdong anyway. Brother Nye Tian, which territory is your branch in? Shang Lai looked at Nye Tian and asked. It seemed that he was very interested in Nye Tian's background. 9 Extremes territory, Nye Tian said with a faint smile. 9 Extremes territory? Shang Lai was stunned for a moment. He asked in surprise, Is there such a territory in the myriad domains? It's just a small territory. It's normal that you haven't heard of it, Nye Tian explained with a faint smile. Shang Lai shook his head and muttered, I know most of the territories in the myriad domains. How could I not have heard of 9 Extremes territory? Maybe it really is a small territory. Nye Tian's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. Wait a minute. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Everyone froze and looked in the direction of the voice. Nye Tian turned around and saw that the person who suddenly spoke was a skinny young man. Perhaps because he was too thin, his eyes were sunken, but they seemed to be very bright. Brother Luoho, what did you find? Shang Lai walked over and shouted at the skinny martial artist nervously. White Knight Evil Spirit. At the same time, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded, and he exclaimed softly. White Knight Evil Spirit? Nye Tian was stunned. He didn't know what the Ghost Emperor was talking about. Nye Tian, that stick of a boy has one of the 8 great ancient evil seals in his body, the 3rd evil seal, White Knight Evil Spirit seal. The Ghost Emperor chuckled and said with blazing eyes, I didn't expect that this small territory would have one of the 8 great ancient evil seals. When Nye Tian heard the Ghost Emperor's words, he couldn't help but focus his gaze on the skinny young man. He was no stranger to the 8 great ancient evil seals. Not long after he came to the territory, he once met a woman who had the soul-absorbing demon seal. She was also someone who had the 8 great ancient evil seals. The demon dragon Wang Minghui told Nye Tian that the 8 great ancient evil seals were 8 evil seals that appeared during the ancient war of gods and demons. Rumor had it that the power of the 8 great ancient evil seals was no weaker than the 10 great ancient seals. However, rumors were rumors after all, and not all of them were true. Now that Nye Tian had learned about the 9 great clans that had created the world, the so-called ancient war of gods and devils didn't seem strange to him at all. After experiencing legends, many things would be deliberately exaggerated, so it wasn't strange. Ghost Emperor, is there anything unusual about the White Knight Evil Spirit seal? Nye Tian became cold and asked with a faint smile. Nye Tian, don't underestimate the White Knight Evil Spirit seal. The Ghost Emperor heard the faint disdain in Nye Tian's tone and said in a deep voice, with the power of the White Knight Evil Spirit seal, it is enough to sense the location of the heaven and earth sacred veins. That's amazing! When Nye Tian heard the Ghost Emperor's words, his eyes trembled and he almost shouted. He didn't expect that the White Knight Evil Spirit Seal could sense the heaven and earth sacred veins. Chapter 32:15. A woman in purple Nye Tian did not expect Luo Ho, who looked unattractive, to have such a powerful seal on him. Luo Ho's eyes were trembling slightly, as if he had discovered something. He looked very excited. Seeing Luo Ho's reaction, the others did not dare to disturb him. They could only watch from the side. After a long time, Luo Ho finally opened his mouth and pointed at a valley in the distance. Here! Brother Luo Ho, what did you find? Shang Lai could not help but ask in astonishment. Follow me. Luo Ho chuckled and dashed toward the valley in front of him. The others reacted and immediately followed. Nye Tian naturally followed as well. He wanted to know what this guy with the White Knight Evil Spirit Seal, the third evil seal, had discovered. Soon, the group arrived outside the valley. Nye Tian looked at the valley in front of him and could not help but frown. He used his divine sense to sense it and indeed sensed a strange aura. However, this aura was very mysterious, as if it was playing hide and seek with him. When he tried to sense it carefully, the strange aura weakened. Luo Ho stopped outside the valley and did not enter immediately. He was very cautious about sensing something. Brother Nye Tian, the Tianxing mountain range is not an ordinary mountain range. There are dangers everywhere. Rumor has it that there are many primordial fierce beasts in the mountain range. Shang Lai walked to Nye Tian and whispered, Brother Luo Ho is sensing this valley. He can only enter after confirming that there is no danger. Nye Tian nodded as he also sensed his surroundings. The crowd looked at Luo Ho and did not dare to be careless. They all waited patiently. A bunch of weaklings. Let me see what is in this valley. However, at this moment, a violent voice suddenly sounded. Then, a figure walked out and was about to enter the valley directly. It's this guy. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw the person. Young Master Dong. The others also exclaimed, looking very nervous. The person who stood out was none other than the young master of the mysterious firmament branch, Hua Qingdong. Obviously, Hua Qingdong wanted to show off in front of the crowd and show them his strength. Big brother Hua, Nana will accompany you. At this moment, another voice rang out. Shang Nana actually walked out and stood beside Hua Qingdong. Seeing this, Nye Tian could not help but frown and shake his head. Although Hua Qingdong looked ordinary, his strength and status were undoubtedly the most outstanding among this group of people. It was not surprising that Shang Nana had been sticking to him. Little sister, stop fooling around. Come back quickly. Shang Lai stepped forward and said nervously. This was the Tianxing mountain range, and it wasn't a place to play around. The slightest carelessness would cause one to be consigned to eternal damnation. Don't worry, big brother. With big brother Hua protecting me, I will be fine. Shang Nana smiled and then got closer to Hua Qingdong. Brother Shang, don't you believe in the strength of Hua Qingdong? Hua Qingdong also opened his mouth at this time. He raised his eyebrows with an arrogant attitude. Shang Lai was stunned for a moment. He still felt uneasy. Then, under everyone's gaze, Hua Qingdong and Shang Nana walked toward the valley step by step. Hua Qingdong looked impulsive on the surface, but in fact, he was very cautious. He approached little by little and did not dare to rush forward. Soon, the two came to the entrance of the valley. Everyone was nervous and did not dare to be careless. No one knew what Luo Ho had sensed in the valley. Big brother Hua, will there be anything wrong? Shang Nana was a little nervous. Her little face was stiff and she looked at Hua Qingdong with trembling eyes. She regretted being impulsive and following Hua Qingdong's lead. But at this time, even if she pinched her nose, she had to go on. It's okay. I will protect you. Hua Qingdong faintly sensed a trace of danger. Although he said that, he slightly stepped aside and let Shang Nana walk in front of him. Watch out. At this time, Luo Ho suddenly screamed and his voice became sharp. Whoosh. Almost at the same time, there was a sound of breaking the air in the valley. Then, a red light appeared and attacked Hua Qingdong and Shang Nana. Shang Nana's first reaction was to scream and panic. Hua Qingdong reacted instantly. He directly grabbed Shang Nana and threw her towards the red light. At this moment of life and death, this guy not only did not protect Shang Nana, but also used her as a human shield and threw her over. Little sister. The sudden scene caused Shang Lai's face to turn pale with fright. With a roar, he charged forward with a swift movement. But he was still a step too late. In midair, the red light opened its bloody mouth and pounced towards Shang Nana. At this moment, everyone saw clearly that the red light was a giant red snake that was more than 10 meters long. Help! The moment the giant red snake fell, Shang Nana felt a bone-piercing chill. She was so scared that she screamed in a miserable voice. Swoosh! At this moment of life and death, a sword shadow appeared in the air. Wherever it fell, there was a bloody light. The giant red snake was directly cut into two. After its body fell to the ground, it twitched a few times and was torn apart by the sword chi. It turned into a pool of flesh and blood. Shang Nana was shocked by the scene in front of her. Her body fell and was caught by Shang Lai. The bloody and horrifying scene made everyone's eyes tremble violently. They were dumbfounded and speechless on the spot. A few seconds later, everyone came to their senses and looked at the person who made the move. Nie Tian stood on the spot with a faint smile on his lips. Fortunately, he reacted in time. Otherwise, Shang Nana would have been a corpse. Brother Nie Tian, thank you for your help. At this moment, Shang Lai excitedly walked over with Shang Nana. He quickly said, "Little sister, thank Brother Nie Tian." Shang Nana looked at Nie Tian with an awkward expression. Her lips trembled, but she finally nodded and said, "Thank you for saving me. It was nothing." Nie Tian smiled faintly and did not say anything else. Instead, he focused his attention on the valley. The moment the giant red snake appeared, he suddenly felt a familiar aura, which made him very surprised. He had encountered that familiar aura not long ago. It was the purple-clothed woman who left in a panic after being stunned by him. Previously, Nie Tian felt that the aura of the purple-clothed woman was inexplicably familiar. Now that the purple-clothed woman appeared again, it made him even more surprised. Who was this purple-clothed woman? At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly saw the purple-clothed woman's figure flash. Like a purple light, she disappeared in an instant. She left again. Nie Tian frowned, his face slightly darkening as he thought to himself. The purple-clothed woman should have been in the valley, but she seemed to have discovered something and left again. Not far away, Luo Ho was also surprised when he discovered the purple-clothed woman. Is she from the 10,000 Domains Guild? Nie Tian looked in the direction the purple-clothed woman disappeared in and frowned. He was very puzzled. He had a feeling that the purple-clothed woman was not from the 10,000 Domains Guild, but from an unknown force. Chapter 32:16. Worse than a scumbag. Nie Tian frowned and gradually calmed down. He felt that he would meet the woman in purple again. Hua Qingdong, you scumbag! Are you trying to get me killed? At that moment, Shang Nana suddenly reacted and looked at Hua Qingdong, shouting angrily. Hua Qingdong was stunned at first, and then he reacted. He suddenly looked up at Shang Nana with a cold look in his eyes and said coldly, "Little girl, who are you calling a scum?" "You!" Shang Nana sensed the murderous intent in Hua Qingdong's eyes. Her face turned pale and she was speechless. She had thought that Hua Qingdong was strong and trustworthy. She did not expect him to be a scumbag who was worse than a beast. He had used her as a human shield at the critical moment of life and death, but now he was trying to kill her. Hua Qingdong's face darkened. He was very angry. He had been too nervous just now. Otherwise, he would not have been scared by a snake. He felt that the scene just now had embarrassed him, and it was all Shang Nana's fault. Shang Lai looked at Hua Qingdong with a stiff face, not daring to speak. Hua Qingdong's mysterious firmament branch was not an organization that the Yunyang branch could afford to offend, and Hua Qingdong's strength alone was not something he could resist. Even if Hua Qingdong had almost killed Shang Nana, he could only endure it. "You are a scumbag!" But at this moment a deep voice rang out, breaking the dead silence of the scene, word by word. Everyone was stunned at first, then they looked at the person who had spoken. It was Nie Tian. "Brother Nie Tian, you." Shang Lai was stunned for a while before he reacted. He was so scared that his face turned pale and he could not speak. Hua Qingdong was the young master of a gold-level branch, so he could not be offended at all. Otherwise, Shang Lai would not have kept quiet. However, as soon as Nie Tian opened his mouth, the situation instantly became tense. The crowd was also taken aback. They stared at Nie Tian in a daze, as if they were wondering if they had misheard. "What did you say?" At this time, Hua Qingdong came to his senses. His eyes became extremely cold. He stared at Nie Tian coldly and opened his mouth with a trembling voice. His killing intent was so intense that it almost solidified and enveloped Nie Tian. He didn't expect Nie Tian to call him a scum in front of so many people. "I said, you're scum." Nie Tian looked at Hua Qingdong and laughed. His eyes were full of contempt as he said, "In other words, you are worse than scum." The faint voice was full of great sarcasm, like a loud slap on Hua Qingdong's face. "You piece of trash, do you think you're invincible just because you killed a bug?" Hua Qingdong's pupils suddenly dilated. With a low roar, his whole body's aura surged crazily. He roared, "I will kill you!" As he spoke, the other martialists of the mysterious firmament branch took a step forward and released their auras. They all wanted to make a move. Whoosh! However, at this moment, Nie Tian's lips curled up into a cold smile. He took a step forward and a sword intent pierced through the air. It formed a sharp blade in the air and shot out. Bang! Puff! In the next moment, wherever the sharp blade of sword intent passed, Hua Qingdong's aura was directly shattered. A sound of flesh being torn apart could be heard in the air, and a dazzling red blood mark appeared on his face. A sword mark. Hua Qingdong retreated a few meters and almost lost his balance. After he steadied himself, his face stiffened. His eyes trembled and he was extremely shocked. He didn't expect Nie Tian's strength to be so terrifying. He was a rank 7 pseudo-sacred realm expert, but he couldn't even withstand a single sword intent from Nie Tian. How was that possible? The other martialists of the mysterious firmament branch were shocked by the scene in front of them. They all retreated in horror, not daring to step forward anymore. The others were even more stunned. Their eyes were wide open and they couldn't believe the scene in front of them. It was hard to imagine that a rank 4 pseudo-sacred realm expert could be so powerful. Shang Lai and Shang Nana were dumbfounded. The bright red sword scar on Hua Qingdong's face made them feel like they were dreaming. Shang Nana, in particular, was completely frozen. She looked at Nie Tian as if she was looking at a monster. How could this silver-haired martialist, whom she had always despised and even despised, be so terrifying? After a dozen seconds, Hua Qingdong finally came to his senses and exclaimed, "You little brat, you!" Just as he was about to say something, he was frightened by Nie Tian's cold gaze and swallowed his words. Nie Tian stood there calmly, but his eyes were surging with cold, killing intent. He raised his head slightly, looked at Hua Qingdong and said, "You're still alive because you're a member of the Myriad Domains Guild. If you say another word, I'll kill you." His voice wasn't loud, but it was extremely chilling. It was as if the surrounding space was filled with a strong killing intent that was suffocating. Hua Qingdong's eyes trembled and his throat moved several times, but he didn't make a sound in the end. Nie Tian's eyes were too frightening. It made Hua Qingdong feel a chill seep into his bones. At this moment, he realized how terrifying this silver-haired martialist in front of him was. Nie Tian's mouth twitched. He ignored Huo Qingdong and looked directly at Luo Ho, saying, "Brother Luo, follow me into the valley." "Yes, yes." Luo Ho was stunned for a long time before he reacted. He swallowed his saliva and nodded repeatedly. After seeing how powerful Nie Tian was, how could he dare to refuse? Nie Tian walked in front and entered the valley step by step, but nothing unusual happened. He looked around the valley and didn't find anything special. What was even more strange was that the strange aura he had sensed in the valley had also disappeared. "Sir, that aura disappeared." Standing behind Nie Tian, Luo Ho hesitated and said, "There was a person in the valley just now. It seems that the aura in the valley disappeared with that figure." "Yes." Nie Tian nodded and couldn't help frowning. Of course, he knew that the person Luo Ho was talking about was the woman in purple. The strange aura in the valley seemed to have disappeared right after the woman in purple disappeared. At this moment, he was even more curious about who the woman in purple was. "Sir." At this time, Luo Ho suddenly approached Nie Tian and lowered his voice. It seemed that he had something to say. "My name is Nie Tian. You can just call me by my name." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he said in a deep voice, "Yes." Luo Ho answered very respectfully. He lowered his voice even more and said, "Sir Nie Tian, I think the woman in purple is very strange. Should we follow her?" "Follow?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment and couldn't help feeling a little surprised. Of course, he wanted to find the woman in purple, but the problem was how to find her. The Tianxing Mountains covered an area of tens of thousands of miles. To find a person was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Chapter 32:17. Holy Bloodline Tentacle, an Evil Spirit Mark. Nie Tian's eyes widened in surprise when he heard Luo Ho's words. The purple-clothed woman had only appeared for a very short period of time. It could be said that she had disappeared in a flash. If he hadn't seen the lady in purple before, he wouldn't have noticed her at all. However, it was Luo Ho's first time seeing the lady in purple. Not only did he notice her presence, but he also left an evil spirit mark on her in an extremely short period of time. Luo Ho's sense of perception was extremely powerful. The Danite evil spirit mark is indeed one of the 8 great ancient evil marks. It is indeed powerful. Nie Tian frowned and exclaimed in his heart. Then, he looked at Luo Ho and asked, "Brother Luo, what is your evil spirit mark? Can it track a martial artist?" "It's just a mark. I can sense the person I've planted the evil spirit mark on." Luo Ho smiled and didn't want to talk about it. Nie Tian nodded with a smile and didn't ask any more questions. After all, the evil spirit mark was Luo Ho's secret. There was no need to tell him. "Lord Nie Tian, should we follow that lady?" Luo Ho looked at Nie Tian with a burning gaze. He hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, "I think that the lady in purple has something to do with the heaven and earth holy bloodline." Why do you think so?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. Then, his eyes narrowed slightly. "Intuition, it's just intuition." Luo Ho chuckled, obviously avoiding the question. "All right, we'll follow her." Nie Tian didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he smiled faintly and nodded. He had a lot of curiosity and questions about the mysterious purple-clothed woman. Since someone could follow the lady in purple, of course they could follow her. Luo Ho gave Nie Tian a sly look and nodded. Then, Nie Tian thought for a moment and said to the crowd, "We're going deep into the Tianxing mountain range. It's very dangerous. Those who don't want to follow can leave now." The crowd was stunned and made a decision after a while. Most people chose to leave. Only the Shang siblings and a one-eyed cultivator were willing to follow Nie Tian and Luo Ho. Although Nie Tian had displayed great battle prowess just now, he was only a fourth-order pseudo-saint martialist after all. In the eyes of the crowd, he could not be considered a true powerhouse. Moreover, he was about to enter the Tianxing mountain range, which was an extremely dangerous place. According to the rumors, There were many ancient ferocious beasts living in the Tianqing mountain range. Many of these beasts were at the Sage Realm. Although their battle strength had been greatly weakened in the Tianqing territory, their strength was still close to the peak of the false sacred realm. Many people felt that Nie Tian was courting death by entering the Tianqing mountain range. Naturally, they wouldn't follow him to his death. Soon, most of the people left. Of course, Hua Qingdong and the martial practitioners of the mysterious firmament branch wouldn't follow Nie Tian. Before leaving, Hua Qingdong glared at Nie Tian fiercely. His eyes were full of resentment. He was obviously unhappy to be humiliated by Nie Tian, but Nie Tian's strength was far above his, so he could only endure it. Lord Nie Tian, Hua Qingdong is very sinister. If you let him go like this, he will definitely take revenge in the future. At that moment, Luo Ho came to Nie Tian's side and looked at the place where Hua Qingdong had disappeared. He couldn't understand why Nie Tian didn't just kill Hua Qingdong since he was so strong. He's just a piece of trash. If he wants revenge, he can come at me. Nie Tian smiled faintly, his eyes cold. He didn't consider Hua Qingdong an opponent at all. The latter wasn't qualified to be his opponent. The reason why he didn't kill Hua Qingdong was that he didn't think it was necessary. In any case, Hua Qingdong was a member of the Myriad Domain Guild. Let's go. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said. Luo Ho agreed and led the way. The most terrifying thing about his White Knight Evil Spirit seal was its powerful perception. In a way, the perception of the White Knight Evil Spirit seal was even stronger than the 3,000 Demon God seals. Luo Ho left an evil spirit mark on the purple-clothed woman. As long as the latter was within 10,000 miles, he could clearly perceive the latter's location. Brother Nie Tian, how can you be so powerful? Your cultivation is clearly below mine. How can your combat power crush an expert like Hua Qingdong? Along the way, Shang Nana followed closely behind Nie Tian and spoke from time to time. Obviously, she wanted to get closer to Nie Tian. But Nie Tian always looked indifferent and didn't want to talk to Shang Nana. This wasn't to say that Shang Nana was a bad woman, but Nie Tian felt that this woman was too utilitarian, and he didn't like her. In the next few days, Nie Tian and the others moved very slowly. Luo Ho could perceive the evil spirit mark, but it consumed a lot of mental power. Every once in a while, he had to stop and take a break. On the way, Nie Tian and the others encountered several fierce beast attacks, but Nie Tian easily dealt with them. After witnessing Nie Tian's strength, Shang Nana almost worshipped Nie Tian from the bottom of her heart. A few days later, Nie Tian and the others came to a valley. Master Nie Tian, the aura of the purple-clothed woman stopped here. She is in the valley. Luo Ho looked at the valley in front of him, his eyes slightly trembling, and said in a low voice, Well, you wait here, I'll go in and have a look. Nie Tian nodded and then walked into the valley. At this time, he didn't perceive the aura of the purple-clothed woman, but he perceived another mysterious aura, exactly the same as the aura he sensed in the last valley. He was worried that the purple-clothed woman would escape again, so without hesitation, he directly flew toward the valley. Roar! But just as his figure was about to enter the valley, a low roar suddenly sounded, following which a black light appeared, as fast as lightning, attacking. Swoosh! Nie Tian's eyes focused, and without any hesitation, he directly slashed out with his sword. Wherever the sword's shadow passed, the air was dripping with fresh blood. It turned out that the black light was actually a black wolf over 10 meters long, which was slain by Nie Tian with one slash. Nie Tian's figure was very fast, stepping into the valley in the air, but the scene that greeted his eyes made his entire person stunned. In the valley, the thick fog in the air condensed into a series of tentacles, stretching out into the sky. Countless fog tentacles danced wildly in the air, like people who had fallen into a swamp, frantically crying for help. Within the fog, an extremely terrifying power was contained, and the aura was incomparably thick. and in midair, a purple-clothed figure stood, eyes closed. It was that mysterious purple-clothed woman. Nye Tian was startled, before he realized that the purple-clothed woman was continuously absorbing the fog tentacles. She's absorbing the power of the fog. Nye Tian squinted his eyes and exclaimed in his heart. Sacred vein tentacles. At that instant the ghost monarch's voice could be heard. Nye Tian was startled, and his eyes flickered. Chapter 32:18. Here comes the killing intent. The moment the purple-clothed woman saw Nye Tian, her eyes involuntarily trembled, and she cried out in alarm. Obviously, she hadn't expected that the person standing in front of her would be Nye Tian. You! Nye Tian's eyes darkened. Just as he was about to speak, the purple-shirt lady moved and the mist in the valley disappeared instantly. Following this, the purple-shirt lady glanced at Nye Tian. Without saying a word, a pair of holy wings formed from white light appeared on her back, and she disappeared into the sky. Nye Tian was startled. He wanted to chase after her, but it was too late. The purple-shirt lady's figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. What is she doing? Nye Tian stood rooted to the ground. It took him a while to react with a puzzled look. She's looking for the sacred veins. At that moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice was heard. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he recalled the Ghost Emperor's words. He asked, Ghost Emperor, what are the sacred veins you mentioned? The mist tentacles in the valley just now were the sacred bloodline tentacles. The Ghost Emperor's face darkened. The mist was the sacred veins chi coming from underground. Normally, the energy of the sacred veins wouldn't leak out. But why are there sacred veins chi? Could it be that the sacred veins in the Tianxing mountain range have cracks? Cracks in the sacred veins. Nye Tian was startled. He had no idea what the Ghost Emperor was talking about. The sacred veins are usually located tens of thousands of meters underground. They're very stable. The Ghost Emperor explained, only when the sacred veins have cracks will the sacred veins chi emerge from underground and form sacred veins chi. Nye Tian did not fully understand. He asked, could it be that the purple-shirt lady could sense the sacred veins chi and absorb its energy? He had seen the purple-shirt lady absorb the energy of the sacred veins chi. Furthermore, the mysterious aura he felt in the ancient past was the sacred veins chi. After the purple-shirt lady disappeared, the aura of the sacred veins chi disappeared too. Thus, Nye Tian guessed that it was the purple-robed woman who had absorbed the saint bloodline chi. She's not absorbing the saint vein chi. The Ghost Emperor shook his head and said, I'm guessing that she's trying to use the saint vein chi to sense the location of the crack. Sense the saint vein's crack? Nye Tian blanked for a moment before asking, what does she want to do? I don't know. The Ghost Monarch frowned and paused for a moment before saying, Nye Tian, I have a feeling that this purple-robed woman isn't from the myriad domain. Are you saying that she's from the saint's world? Nye Tian's eyes trembled as he asked in surprise. The Ghost Emperor hesitated for a moment before replying, it's very likely. Nye Tian's pupils constricted slightly, and he was stunned on the spot. He never thought that the purple-robed woman would actually come from the sacred realm. Why would a holy world martial practitioner appear in a realm? What was her purpose in coming to this realm? Why did she want to sense the crack in the saint vein? Everything was like a huge mystery that lingered in Nye Tian's mind. The Ghost Monarch's expression was similarly ugly. He had already confirmed that the purple-robed woman came from the sacred realm, and her identity was not simple at all. She was from the Holy Feather race. The Holy Feather race was an extremely large force in the sacred realm. The Ghost Monarch had seen the white wings that appeared on the purple-robed woman's back when she left. It was the symbol of the Holy Feather race. Holy Feather! At that moment, Nye Tian suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but exclaim, I remember! He finally remembered where he had seen the purple-robed woman's aura before. The Heavenly Feather race, Aya. Among the 9 extremities, there was a little girl from the Heavenly Feather race, Aya. Nie Tian had saved her when he accompanied Jing Yue and the others to the sacred Moon Dynasty. The purple-robed woman's aura was similar to Aya's. No wonder Nie Tian had felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity when he saw the purple-robed woman. The purple-robed woman's aura was very similar to Aya's, but there were still some slight differences between the two. It seemed that Aya's aura was not as pure as the purple-robed woman's. Could it be that Aya and the purple-robed woman are from the same race? Nie Tian frowned as he thought to himself. Nie Tian, have that stick continue to follow the purple-robed woman, the ghost monarch said solemnly. Nie Tian nodded and walked out of the valley. Lord Nie Tian, the purple-robed woman has left, Luo Ho hurriedly said when he saw Nie Tian come out. Let's continue to follow her, Nie Tian nodded and said solemnly. Then, they continued to follow the purple-robed woman. Several days later, Nie Tian and the others arrived outside a dense forest. Brother Nie Tian, this forest looks a little strange, Shang Lai said with a frown as he walked to Nie Tian's side. This forest is a killing formation, right? It looks eerie. Shang Nana also walked over and couldn't help but comment. This forest is indeed shrouded by a killing formation. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He wasn't flustered at all. Instead, his lips curled into a smile. A killing formation of this level was naturally not a problem for the ghost monarch. Nie Tian was curious about what was in the forest and why there was a killing formation. That's strange. The purple-robed woman's aura has disappeared in this forest. Luo Ho approached Nie Tian and said with a puzzled expression. His evil spirit imprint could exist for several months. However, the aura of the evil spirit imprint had stopped in the forest. Luo Ho tried his best to sense it, but he couldn't sense the purple-robed woman's aura at all. It seems like this forest is not simple. Nie Tian looked at the forest in front of him and said solemnly. Nie Tian, give this emperor some time, the ghost monarch's voice rang out. The killing formation in the forest was not complicated. However, it would still take some time to completely deconstruct the formation's structure. Nie Tian replied. He wasn't in a hurry and waited on the spot. In the blink of an eye, a day passed. The ghost monarch had more or less deconstructed the killing formation's structure. But at this moment, Luo Ho suddenly came to Nie Tian's side and said nervously, Lord Nie Tian, someone is coming. Nie Tian went blank for a moment before his expression flickered. Shang Lai and his sister saw the change in Nie Tian's expression and instantly became nervous. They involuntarily moved closer to Nie Tian. Brat, I've finally found you. A moment later, a deep voice rang out. Then, a white-robed figure flew through the air and arrived in front of Nie Tian and the others. A pair of cold eyes stared at Nie Tian with murderous intent. It was as if he wanted to devour Nie Tian. It's you. Nie Tian looked at the figure that suddenly appeared. His eyes narrowed and the corner of his mouth twitched. The person who appeared was none other than the young master of the mysterious firmament branch, Hua Qingdong, who had been humiliated by Nie Tian not long ago. That's me. Hua Qingdong sneered. The murderous intent in his eyes was extremely strong. Qingdong, is the person who hurt you this silver hair? Then, a vigorous and violent voice rang out in the void. Then, a black-robed figure appeared and stood coldly in the void. His entire body emitted a cold aura and a heavy murderous intent. Chapter 32:19. Young Master Xian Su. Young Master Xian Su. Shang Lai stared at the black-clothed martialist in shock, as though he had seen something terrifying. His eyes were filled with uncontrollable fear. He is young Master Xian Su. Shang Nana exclaimed in shock when she heard Shang Lai's words. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. It seemed like this young Master Xian Su had some sort of background. Furthermore, it was obvious that young Master Xian Su was standing up for Hua Qingdong. Cousin, this is the brat who humiliated me and left a sword scar on my face. Hua Qingdong said with a cold smile as he looked at Nie Tian. Cousin? Shang Lai's face stiffened when he heard Hua Qingdong call young Master Xian Su cousin. His eyes widened. He had never imagined that young Master Xian Su, one of the 9 great young masters, was actually Hua Qingdong's cousin. One had to know that young Master Xian Su was a martialist from the diamond-level Lingyu branch. The myriad domain guilds branches had a clear hierarchy. From high to low, they were diamond level, gold level, bronze level, and iron level. Shang Lai's Yunyang branch was a bronze level branch. Hua Qingdong's mysterious firmament branch was a gold level branch. Bronze level and gold level branches could only be considered average branches. Diamond level branches were extremely powerful. There were only 5 diamond level branches in the entire myriad domain guild. Young Master Xian Su's Lingyu branch was a diamond-level branch. Hence, young Master Xian Su's background was extremely powerful. As for himself, he was one of the 9 great young masters due to his exceptional strength and talent. The so-called 9 great young masters were the 9 strongest martialists under 100,000 years of age in the entire Myriad Domain Guild. Brother Shang, who is this person? Nie Tian asked Shang Lai through voice transmission as he looked at young Master Xian Su. You don't know who he is? Shang Lai exclaimed. He could not help but glance at Nie Tian. His expression seemed to say, Are you from the Myriad Domain Guild? However, he still introduced young Master Xian Su to Nie Tian. The 9 young masters, interesting. Hearing Shang Lai's words, Nie Tian's lips twitched. He smiled in his heart, showing no signs of fear. Kid, did you leave the sword mark on his face? At this moment, young Master Xian Su spoke coldly. His eyes exuded an extremely sharp killing intent. So what if it's me? Nie Tian smiled calmly. Just at this moment, several dozen cultivators appeared behind young Master Xian Su and Hua Qingdong. All of them had surging auras and a strong killing intent. Shang Lai and the rest subconsciously retreated behind Nie Tian, their faces filled with shock and fear. Young Master Xuanxiu had a notorious reputation in the Myriad Domain Guild. He was the most ruthless and bloodthirsty among the 9 great young masters. Who would have thought that the Myriad Domain Guild would send geniuses like the 9 great princes to search for heaven and earth holy veins? I'll give you a chance to live. Young Master Xian Su stared at Nie Tian with a cold glint flashing in his eyes and said in a deep voice, Let me leave 2 sword marks on your face, then kneel down and kowtow to Hua Qingdong to admit your mistake. Then you can live. His deep voice was filled with a strong sense of threat. Oh! When Nie Tian heard young Master Xian Su's words, he chuckled and raised his brows. And if I don't do that? Die. Young Master Xian Su took a step forward, and his aura surged wildly. His entire person was like a wild beast. A terrifying power burst out in an instant, causing the surrounding space to tremble slightly. Rank 9 Pseudo-Sage. Shang Lai and the rest exclaimed in shock when they saw this scene. They had long known that the 9 great young masters were very strong, but they did not expect them to be this strong. Young Master Xian Su's strength had actually reached a shocking rank 9 Pseudo-Sage. Is that all you have? When Nie Tian felt young Master Xian Su's aura, there was no fear in his eyes. Instead, there was undisguised disdain. Young Master Xian Su was at least 50,000 years old. It was very normal for his strength to reach rank 9 Pseudo-Sage. The boundless ghost wilderness was not even 1,000 years old, but he was already a rank 9 Pseudo-Sage. Compared to the boundless ghost wilderness, young Master Xian Su had wasted his years. Brat, you dare to look down on this young master? Young Master Xian Su's eyes darkened, and his expression was extremely cold. His eyes were extremely vicious, as though he wanted nothing more than to skin Nie Tian alive. He was a rank 9 Pseudo-Sage expert, but he was actually being looked down upon by a rank 4 Pseudo-Sage cultivator. How could he not be furious? Humph! Nie Tian's eyes turned cold and he laughed coldly. He took a step forward, and his sword aura surged wildly. If you want to stand up for that scum, then show me your strength. Ever since he had tempered his body with saint energy, Nye Tian had made a breakthrough in his strength. He had not had a good fight yet. Young Master Xian Su was a rank 9 pseudo-sage, and he was one of the 9 great young masters. It was a good opportunity for him to test out Nye Tian's current strength. Courting death. When young Master Xian Su saw that Nye Tian had actually taken the initiative to challenge him, he immediately felt insulted. With a low roar, his aura surged once more. Bang! In the next instant, the two auras clashed in midair, causing the void to tremble and the space to tremble. Nye Tian's figure swayed slightly, and after taking a few steps back, he found his footing firmly. On the other hand, young Master Xian Su was as steady as a mountain, not moving at all. After all, he was a rank 9 pseudo-sage, while Nye Tian was only a rank 4 pseudo-sage. In a head-on clash of auras, Nye Tian was still slightly weaker. After forcing Nye Tian back with his aura, young Master Xian Su did not reveal joy on his face. Instead, he revealed shock and anger. He was a rank 9 pseudo-sage cultivator, and yet he was only able to force back a rank 4 pseudo-sage cultivator when clashing with his aura. How was that possible? If it was an ordinary rank 4 pseudo-sage cultivator, they would be severely injured even if they did not die from the impact of such an aura. However, Nye Tian only took a few steps back and was completely fine. This lad's aura is so strong. When everyone saw this, their eyes could not help but tremble as they exclaimed. With the strength of a rank 4 pseudo-sage, he was only at a slight disadvantage against a rank 9 pseudo-sage cultivator. Nye Tian's talent was so high that it made one's hair stand on end. Is this all you've got? After stabilizing himself, Nye Tian's lips twitched, and he mocked in a cold manner. Looks like you don't live up to your title as one of the 9 young masters. Brat, you've angered me. Young Master Xian Su looked at Nye Tian with an extremely cold gaze. A black sword appeared in his hand, emitting an extremely sinister aura. Ultimate Divine Sword Physique. Nye Tian looked at the black sword in young Master Xian Su's hand and could not help but narrow his eyes as his expression changed slightly. He had not expected young Master Xian Su to be a swordsman at the Ultimate Divine Sword Physique realm. Looks like I've underestimated you. In the next moment, Nye Tian's lips twitched and his eyes burned with a strong battle intent. A swordsman with the Ultimate Divine Sword Physique was worthy of Nye Tian fighting with all his might. Brother Xian Su, you're really hot-tempered. However, at that moment, a voice sounded in the air. Following that, a white-robed cultivator appeared high up in the sky like a phantom. Chapter 32:20. A Clash of Geniuses, Bu Qingqian. Hearing this name, everyone was stunned and exclaimed in unison. Young Master Qingqian. Shang Lai looked at the white-robed man, and his eyes widened. At the same time, Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he looked at the white-robed man. He was quite surprised. However, what surprised him was not the white-robed man's strength, but the latter's appearance. This man had delicate features and smooth skin. His facial features were more exquisite than most women's. If he were to change into women's clothes, he would probably charm countless men. Furthermore, this man was not tall. He was only slightly taller than the average woman. At this moment, the white-robed man stood in midair. His white robes fluttered like snow, like a white lotus blooming in the sky. His name was Bu Qingqian. Like Xian Su, he was also one of the 9 princes. Furthermore, he was ranked 6th among the 9 princes, even higher than the 9th-ranked Xian Su. Bu Qingqian, I didn't expect you to come as well. Young Master Xian Su clearly did not expect Bu Qingqian to appear. After he reacted, he spoke with a gloomy expression. If you can come, why can't I, Bu Qingqian? Bu Qingqian smiled faintly and retorted. His figure floated in the air like a ghost, blocking between Nye Tian and young Master Xian Su. Buqinchin, you'd better not interfere in my affairs, young Master Xian Su said coldly as he looked at Buqinchin. Xian Su, with your strength, don't you think it's a little too much to bully a rank 4 pseudo-sage martialist? Buqinchin chuckled and looked at young Master Xian Su in a provocative manner. Buqinchin, if you leave now, I will pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Xian Su's expression darkened as he threatened Buqinchin coldly. Otherwise? Buqinchin raised an eyebrow and said coldly, otherwise, what do you want? Everyone's expression changed when they saw this, and their eyes burned with passion. Everyone could feel the tension between Xian Su and Buqinchin. Both of them were experts among the 9 princes. If they fought, it would be very exciting. Nie Tian, on the other hand, smiled faintly and stepped back. Since there were people who refused to accept the mystery, he was naturally willing to be a bystander. Buqinchin, you've gone too far. At this moment, Xian Su roared out as his entire body's sword force burst forth. It was like a raging tsunami that rumbled through the void. Since that's the case, let's make our move. Buqinchin faintly smiled at the enraged Xian Su, and a slender sword appeared behind him, floating in midair. It did not look like a sword, but more like a magnified needle. Heavenly will light dust. Xian Su looked at the slender sword on Buqinchin's back, and his face sank. His eyes trembled slightly. He had not expected Buqinchin to have already cultivated the ultimate divine sword body. Buqinchin's original spirit sword, Heaven's Will Light Dust, was much sharper than before. The light dust of heavens will floated in midair, its sharp aura permeating the surrounding thousands of meters. The terrifying pressure it exuded was suffocating. What a sharp sword! Nie Tian's heart trembled slightly. He was quite surprised. The most direct aura he could feel from the light dust of Heaven's Will was sharpness, an aura that was extremely sharp. 2 of the 9 young masters had appeared, and they were both swordsmen. Furthermore, their sword Dao realm was so high that it made Nie Tian raise his eyebrows. Xian Su, let's fight. Let me see if your 1,000-mountain Xian Kuan is still as vigorous as before, Buqinchin said coldly. He stood with his hands behind his back, looking like a supreme sword god, extremely sharp. Arrogant. Do you really think this young master is afraid of you? Xian Su roared like a ferocious beast, and the sword intent around him burst forth. Waves of violent sword intent rushed into the void, and the surrounding space turned dark, dim, and oppressive. Boom! In the next moment, the 1,000-mountain Xian Kuan in Xian Su's hand made his move. Instantly, illusions of mountains appeared in the air, shrouding over like dark clouds. The sky turned dark, and the sun and moon lost their color. Using the sword intent to condense the mountains, the vigorous aura completely burst forth in an instant. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not expect Xian Su's sword intent to be so vigorous, comparable to a peak bladesman. Humph, is that all? Buqinchin felt the incoming pressure, but he laughed coldly. The heavenly will light dust trembled in the air, and rays of sharp sword shadows shot out. Instantly, there was an ear-piercing sound in the void, as though the space was about to be torn apart. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed again, surprised by the sharpness of Buqinchin's sword intent. Xian Su and Buqinchin, one had a vigorous sword intent, while the other had a sharp sword intent. Moreover, both of them had the strength of a 9th-step pseudo-sage, and had the ultimate god sword body. It seemed like they were evenly matched. Chi. In the next instant, the 2 terrifying forces collided. The sharp sword shadows actually tore apart all the illusions of the mountains in an instant. Swoosh! Immediately after, a sharp sword light that was incomparably dazzling, emitting a terrifying killing intent, rushed towards Xian Su. Xian Su's eyes narrowed and his expression changed. The 1,000 mountains Xian Kuan soared into the sky, and a surge of sword intent swept out, blocking the deadly sword light. However, his figure was forced to take a few steps back, and he seemed to be in a sorry state. What a terrifying pair! No wonder they are the 9 princes. The crowd looked at the scene in the sky, and their eyes trembled slightly as they exclaimed. The strength of Xian Su and Bu Qingchen had exceeded everyone's expectations. However, in comparison, Bu Qingchen's strength seemed to be much stronger than Xian Su's. After all, in the first exchange, Bu Qingchen had gained the upper hand. Eyebrows furrowed, Nie Tian thought to himself, their sword intents are evenly matched. It's just that Bu Qingchen's mastery of sword intent has already reached the pinnacle. Xian Su's is far from being a match for him. He was astonished that Bu Qingchen's control over the sword will was so terrifying. It was so precise. Xian Su, after not seeing you for so many years, not only did your strength not increase, but it has also weakened. Bu Qingchen stood in the sky with his hands behind his back and mocked, "How disappointing! Damn it!" Xian Su was infuriated, and he roared like a wild beast. His eyes were bloodshot, and the sword intent around his body rose. His entire person was like a mountain standing in the sky. What a powerful aura! The crowd looked at Xian Su, and they couldn't help but exclaim. The aura that Xian Su was displaying right now was too strong, and it was shocking. However, Nie Tian's lips twitched and he shook his head. It's about time to decide the winner. In a battle between geniuses, victory or defeat could be decided in an instant. Bu Qingchen was as calm as water, and he had infuriated Xian Su while talking. This determined that Xian Su would lose for sure. If Xian Su could stabilize his state of mind and slowly drag out the battle, he might have a chance of winning. But now that he was angry, he would lose for sure. Xian Kuan's sword art, 1,000 mountains. At this moment, Xian Su roared and his silhouette moved. The 1,000 mountains in his hand slashed out. Chapter 32:21. Everyone must die. Rumble. High up in the sky, the violent silhouettes of the mountains pressed down on Bu Qingchen and Lin like tidal waves. The entire space shook and the sky darkened. Everyone's eyes widened and they couldn't help but retreat. Xian Su's sword was truly terrifying and made everyone's hearts tremble. Facing the pressure of the mountains, Bu Qingchen's eyes trembled a little, but only a little. Sword technique of destiny, rainstorm. In the next moment, his lips twitched. The light whisk of destiny that was floating behind him trembled a little and stabbed forward. Instantly, countless silhouettes of swords appeared. Like a real rainstorm, the sound of space being torn apart filled the air. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The rainstorm was as sharp as needles and the sound of space being torn apart could be heard. The sword's will was so sharp that it could kill. Xian Su lost. Nie Tian watched the scene in the sky and his lips twitched a little as he sighed. Bang, bang, bang. Just as his voice trailed off, a terrifying rumble resonated in the sky. The mountains were torn apart and the swords were dispersed in the air. Bang. Then, a muffled sound was heard and Xian Su's silhouette was flung backwards, drawing a line of blood across the sky. What they saw made everyone exclaim in shock. Their faces were filled with shock. Xian Su's silhouette was flung back for hundreds of meters before he finally stabilized himself. However, his entire body was covered in blood and his flesh was a mess. It was as if he had been pierced by countless needles. Bu Qingchen, you. His eyes trembled and his expression was one of extreme shock. He wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. All his meridians had been destroyed by Bu Qingchen. Nie Tian's eyes froze and he immediately reacted. The corner of his lips twitched uncontrollably. He didn't think that Bu Qingchen's methods would be so ruthless and vicious. He directly destroyed Xian Su's cultivation. Xian Su, you should be glad that I didn't kill you. At this moment Bu Qingchen spoke. He smiled coldly and said, destroying your Yuan meridians is already my greatest mercy. Xian Su is destroyed. Everyone finally reacted after hearing Bu Qingchen's words. Their faces changed color and they were extremely shocked. Just now, everyone thought that the battle between Bu Qingchen and Xian Su was just an exchange of pointers. However, Bu Qingchen's ruthlessness exceeded everyone's expectations. Bu Qingchen, you bastard, you! Xian Su's eyes suddenly widened, and he roared like a wild beast. However, he only roared halfway before his body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. After that, his body fell straight down like a kite with its string cut. Cousin! Seeing this, Hua Qingdong finally reacted and shouted. Then, his figure flashed and he flew towards the Xian Su, courting death. However, at this moment, Bu Qingchen, who was high up in the sky, sneered coldly. The heavenly will light dust streaked across the sky, and a sharp sword intent shot out towards Hua Qingdong. Hua Qingdong, who was in the air, suddenly felt a piercing chill. His eyes could not help but tremble. Pooh! In the next moment, before he could even react in the slightest, the sword inside had directly pierced through his neck, causing blood to gush out violently, and it was a bloody scene. Bang! Bang! Following this, Xian Su and Hua Qingdong's bodies smashed onto the ground like two giant rocks, and turned into two piles of flesh. Hiss! The horrifying scene caused everyone's eyes to tremble, and they gasped. The fear in their hearts was written all over their faces. Bu Qingchen was so ruthless, to actually kill Xian Su and Hua Qingdong. Previously, when Bu Qingchen crippled Xian Su, everyone thought that he would not kill the latter. However, from the looks of it now, crippling Xian Su before killing him was just to make the latter suffer more before his death. Xian Su's meridians were crippled, and he felt despair, but in his heart, he must still be thinking of revenge. Unfortunately, when he fell from the sky, he was destined to die. One could imagine how hopeless he was during the fall. As for Hua Qingdong, he wanted to save Xian Su, so he was killed by Bu Qingchen. Bu Qingchen even dared to kill Xian Su, so why would he care about a small fry like Hua Qingdong? This man is so vicious. Nie Tian looked at Bu Qingchen, and the corner of his lips twitched as he thought to himself. At this moment, everyone looked at Bu Qingchen with unconcealable fear in their eyes. Are you with young Master Xian Su? Then, Bu Qingchen's eyes darkened, and he glanced at the people of the Spirit Jade and Mysterious Firmament mountain branches as he spoke coldly. We. The group of cultivators felt the bone-chilling killing intent, and their faces changed. Their lips trembled, but they could not make a sound. It was obvious that Bu Qingchen wanted to kill them. Since you are not saying anything, it means that you agree. Bu Qingchen sneered, and then he took a step forward. Instantly, countless sword shadows whizzed out, blotting out the sky and covering the earth, and slashed towards the people below. Run! At this moment, the crowd finally reacted, and they screamed in fear as they started to run for their lives. However, at this moment, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. How could they escape from the sword shadows that filled the sky? Sky slash! At this moment of life and death, a deep voice suddenly sounded. Then, a majestic sword shadow appeared, forcibly breaking through the sword shadows that filled the sky and saved the crowd. The sudden scene caused Bu Qingchen's face to darken. He turned around abruptly, and his cold eyes stared at a silver-haired figure. It was Nie Tian. Brother Nie Tian. Lord Nie Tian. Shang Lai and Luo Ho were stunned when they saw Nie Tian's sudden attack, and they shouted in fear. They did not expect Nie Tian to attack at this moment. The people that Bu Qingchen killed were from the Spirit Jade and Mysterious Firmament mountain branches. What did it have to do with Nie Tian? Moreover, Bu Qingchen had just killed Xian Su, and it could be said that he had helped Nie Tian. Brat, I killed Xian Su. Not only did you not thank me, but you also want to attack me. That's not appropriate, right? Bu Qingchen looked at Nie Tian and sneered. Even if I don't attack now, you will still kill me later, won't you? Nie Tian's lips twitched, and he replied with a faint smile. Bu Qingchen had killed the people from the Spirit Jade and Mysterious Firmament mountain branches to silence them. Xiansu's status was very high. Of course, he could not be killed on a whim. The moment Buqingchen killed Xiansu, he had already made up his mind to silence them. However, he did not expect Nie Tian to attack first. "Brat, you are not too stupid." Buqingchen smiled sinisterly and said, "Today, all of you will die. Because you saw something you should not have seen." This. Shang Lai, Luoho, and the others were stunned. Buqingchen actually wanted to kill them. "You want to kill us? I'm afraid you don't have the strength to do so." Nie Tian smiled faintly, and a cold smile appeared on his face. His sword aura erupted from his body. In the Primal Chaos Origin Coffin, the Azure Dragon Star Soul in the original Star Soul canon started to flicker, and the astral runes became active. Although the Azure Dragon Star Soul had been merged with the boundless Desolate Ghost Star Soul, it had left behind an Star Soul diagram in the original Star Soul canon. Not long ago, Nie Tian successfully used the Azure Dragon Star Soul diagram to carve out the Azure Dragon Star Soul. Chapter 32-22. Scheming. A mere 4th-ranked pseudo-sacred ant dares to fight against me? What a joke. Buqingchen looked at Nie Tian with disdain. Sword intent surged from his body, and a sharp aura was released, as though it was going to tear the void apart. Ignoring Buqingchen's provocation, Nie Tian narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Everyone, back off." His next battle with Buqingchen would be extremely intense. It would be better for the others to retreat. Shang Lai and the rest looked at Nie Tian and retreated. At this moment, Shang Lai and the rest were filled with worry. They knew that Nie Tian was strong, but Nie Tian's opponent was undoubtedly stronger. Even one of the 9 princes, Xiansu, was easily killed by Buqingchen. Would Nie Tian be Buqingchen's opponent? At the same time, the others retreated as well. They were waiting for an opportunity to escape. Of course, they didn't believe that Nie Tian would be Buqingchen's opponent. You can't even protect yourself. Why would you care about others? Buqingchen laughed coldly. The heavenly will light dust in his hand trembled slightly. Instantly, a sharp sword intent transformed into hundreds of terrifying sword shadows, enveloping Nie Tian. Roar! Nie Tian's lips twitched as he summoned his Azure Dragon Astral Soul. Numerous astral inscriptions surged in the air, instantly forming an azure dragon that was thousands of meters long. It roared angrily, shaking the heavens and earth. Chi chi chi. In the next moment, the sword shadows whistled and tore the azure dragon apart. Following which, a cold sword light transformed into a ray of light and shot towards Nie Tian. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian felt a suffocating pressure. His expression changed slightly, and a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back as he retreated frantically. However, he was still one step too late. Pooh! The sword light flashed and the air was dyed red. On Nie Tian's shoulder, a wound so deep that his bones could be seen appeared. His flesh and blood curled up, dyeing half of his body red in an instant. He retreated a few hundred meters before he managed to stabilize himself. Upon seeing this, Shang Lai's eyes flickered as he exclaimed, "Brother Nie Tian." This scene was within his expectations, but when it really happened, he was still extremely shocked. No matter how talented Nie Tian was, there was no way he could fight against Buqingchen, who was a stage 9 pseudo-sage. It was just that Nie Tian's injuries were too tragic. This guy can't hold on any longer. The others looked at Nie Tian in shock and couldn't help but retreat. Nie Tian steadied himself. His countenance was somewhat unsightly. A bitter smile appeared on his face as he thought to himself, "The Azure Dragon Astral Soul is still not enough." The Azure Dragon Astral Soul he used earlier was based on the Azure Dragon Astral Soul diagram recorded in the original Codex of Astral Souls, slowly inscribing it using astral runes. The astral souls inscribed using this method were like a painting apprentice, drawing out each stroke at a time. Naturally, the power of the astral souls would be very weak. Nie Tian had already mentally prepared himself that the power of the Azure Dragon Astral Soul wouldn't be too strong. After all, the Azure Dragon Astral Soul was no longer recorded in the original Codex of Astral Souls. However, he didn't expect that the Azure Dragon Astral Soul would be so weak. It was simply an empty shell. It couldn't even block a single attack from Buqingshan. In fact, Buqingshan's strength was slightly weaker than the opponent Nie Tian had faced before, Fei Sirius from the Fei Tian Azure race. Back then, when Nie Tian faced Fei Sirius, he had used the Azure Dragon Astral Soul to instantly kill the latter. But now, his Azure Dragon Astral Soul wasn't even worth mentioning. It seems like my ability to inscribe astral souls is too weak. Nie Tian smiled bitterly as he frowned and looked at Buqingshan in the distance. One had to admit that Buqingshan's sword intent was extremely strong and sharp to the extreme. Nie Tian had once encountered swordsmen with a higher realm in the sword Dao. However, the sword intent of those swordsmen was not as sharp as Buqingshan's. Furthermore, Buqingshan's usage of sword intent was terrifying. His sword intent was condensed into a blade that was incomparably sharp. If it wasn't for this, Buqingshan wouldn't have been able to kill Xian Su so easily. Huh! Buqingshan's eyes narrowed when he injured Nie Tian. There wasn't any joy on his face. Instead, he was extremely shocked. He saw that the wound on Nie Tian's shoulder had actually healed in the blink of an eye. His sword intent was as sharp as a blade and extremely violent. If it was an ordinary fourth-ranked pseudo-sage cultivator, they would have been torn apart by his sword intent. However, Nie Tian's martial physique was extremely strong. He was actually able to force out Buqingshan's sword intent. Nie Tian's lips curled into a smile as his wound healed. Fortunately, his martial physique was extremely strong. Otherwise, that sword would have taken his life. Brat, you're not bad. You won a chance for yourself to live. Meanwhile, Buqingshan's eyes narrowed slightly as his lips curled into a sinister grin. He said, "If you help me kill everyone here, I'll let you live." The crowd's eyes narrowed and their faces darkened after hearing Buqingshan's words. Although in their eyes, Nie Tian's strength was far weaker than Buqingshan's, Nie Tian was their only hope. If this hope turned into a murderous sword, they would have no chance of surviving. "Buqingshan, you're really good at scheming." Nie Tian laughed and said, "But do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? If I really help you kill these people, I'm afraid you'll kill me without hesitation." Buqingshan's face darkened and turned cold. He obviously didn't expect Nie Tiancheng to be so cunning that he could see through his thoughts with a single glance. It was true that he had no intention of letting Nie Tian go. He only wanted to use Nie Tian to kill these people. "Brat, you're smart." Buqingshan smiled coldly and said, "I wanted to save some trouble, but it seems like I'll have to do it myself." Whoosh! As the sound of his voice faded, Buqingshan's sword pierced through the air. A sharp sword intent whistled through the air, bringing with it an extremely cold and murderous aura as it headed towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his expression changed. Buqingshan's sword intent was extremely sharp. In an instant, he felt a suffocating pressure. However, in the next moment, his lips twitched and an astral shield appeared around him. Instead of retreating, he moved forward and rushed towards Buqingshan. Buqingshan's expression changed. Nie Tian's fierceness had exceeded his expectations. Human sword slashes the stars. At that moment, Nie Tian roared in a low voice. A terrifying sword shadow appeared in the air. Like a mad dragon, it pressed down, causing the entire space to tremble. It was as if the heavens and earth were about to be split apart. "You're courting death." Buqingshan laughed coldly. His heavenly will light dust swept out and a ray of sword light appeared, aiming for Nie Tian's throat. Nie Tian dodged to the side, avoiding the attack. However, a terrifying wound appeared on his shoulder and blood gushed out. Bang! At the same time, Buqingchen retreated under the attack of the powerful sword shadow. He only managed to stabilize himself after retreating for more than 1,000 meters. He looked extremely pathetic. He didn't expect that Nie Tian's attack would be so terrifying. At that moment, the people from the Spirit Jade and Mysterious Firmament branches seized the opportunity and started to flee. Chapter 32-23. A head-on battle. Buqingchen's eyes were cold and murderous. He would not allow anyone to escape. Otherwise, the fact that he had killed Xian Su would be exposed. Sword technique of heavenly will, blade of hurricane. His eyes turned cold, and with a roar, the sword will in his body condensed in an instant. It turned into countless wind blades in the air, and with the momentum of a whirlwind, it enveloped the crowd. Everyone felt the incoming murderous intent, and their expressions changed. Many of them stood rooted to the ground, waiting for their deaths. Sun Reversal Sword. At this moment, a furious roar resounded, and Nie Tian's sword intent surged out like raging waves. The starlight heavenly slash slashed down violently, and a gigantic sword shadow that was over 10,000 meters long appeared in the sky. It was like a wild beast, and it smashed down towards Buqingchen. Buzz! At this moment, the sky trembled and a low rumbling sound was heard. The sky shook and the clouds changed color. Buqingchen suddenly felt an enormous pressure on his head. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Then, he abruptly turned around and saw the gigantic shadow of the sword. His face changed color and his eyes revealed a look of shock. He didn't think that Nie Tian's strength would be this strong. One slash was enough to unleash such a terrifying force. If he insisted on killing the others, he would definitely be severely injured by Nie Tian. Sword technique of heavenly will, mountain. At this moment of life and death, Buqingchen's eyes trembled. He stabbed out with the light whisk of heavenly will. Boundless sword intent condensed into the shape of a mountain in the sky. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the sword shadow fell down and the sky shook. The enormous mountain shadow could not withstand the impact of the sword shadow and exploded instantly. It turned into countless waves of sword intent and attacked the sky. Bang! Then, a muffled sound was heard and Buqingchen's body was flung thousands of meters away. After he stabilized himself, blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. His expression was extremely ugly. He had never expected that Nie Tian's sword strike would be so terrifyingly powerful. Shang Lai and the others were stunned by the scene in front of them, and then they were petrified on the spot. Nie Tian's sword had made Buqingchen vomit blood. How was this possible? Nie Tian was only a 4th-rank pseudo-martial sage, but his battle prowess wasn't any weaker than the 9 titles. If he hadn't witnessed such a shocking scene with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it at all. Run! At this time, the other people were stunned for a moment before they immediately reacted and ran in all directions while screaming. Buqingchen's face was so gloomy that it looked like it was about to drip blood. His eyes were filled with a cold, killing intent. At this moment, he really wanted to attack and kill everyone who was running away. But when his gaze swept over Nie Tian, he revealed an unconcealable fear. Nie Tian's attack just now made him realize that the former was a very terrifying opponent. If it was an ordinary rank 4, pseudo-saint martial artist, they would be like ants in his eyes. However, Nie Tian's battle prowess clearly far surpassed martial artists of the same level. Buqingchen, let's stop here. At this moment, Nie Tian's eyes darkened slightly as he said indifferently. Although he had injured Buqingchen with his sword, the latter was only lightly injured, and it wouldn't affect his battle prowess at all. Moreover, Buqingchen was very powerful. If they continued to fight, it would definitely be a life-and-death battle. Nie Tian wasn't afraid of Buqingchen, but he didn't want to waste time on this person. Although Buqingchen had killed Xian Su and Hua Qingdong and was ruthless and sinister, it had nothing to do with Nie Tian. Moreover, the people from the Lingyu branch and the Mysterious Firmament branch had already escaped, so there would naturally be someone else to deal with Buchinchin in the future. Stop! Buchinchin glared at Nyetian with his eyes almost spitting fire. A trembling voice came from his throat as he said coldly, "Brat, if I don't kill you today, my name isn't Buchinchin." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Buchinchin's aura surged crazily and waves of sharp sword essence surged in the void. The aura was so sharp that it seemed as if it could tear everything apart. Nyetian had injured him and let the others go. How could Buchinchin let this go? Moreover, Buchinchin didn't think that Nyetian was a match for him. The reason why he had been injured was that he had been caught off guard by Nyetian's sword strike just now. Now, he was going to fight with all his might. "Buchinchin, I don't want to kill you. However, if you insist on fighting, I won't be afraid of you." Nyetian's eyes turned slightly cold as he said in a deep voice, "You don't want to kill me?" Buchinchin sneered as if he had heard a joke. He laughed coldly and said, "Even a piece of trash like you dares to be so insolent?" As the sound of his voice faded, his body began to exude a terrifying killing intent. The light whisk of heavens will spun in the air, and a series of sword shadows appeared, crisscrossing each other. In the blink of an eye, a huge sword net was formed. "Little brat, prepare to die." Buchinchin roared in a low voice as he stabbed forward with the divine will light dust. Instantly, a terrifying sword net was formed like a rain of arrows, sealing the surrounding space and spreading towards Nyetian. Buzz! In the blink of an eye, the huge sword net caused the void to groan. The space shook violently as if it was about to collapse. "This guy is so terrifying." Shang Lai and the rest could feel the terrifying pressure coming towards them. Instantly, their eyes trembled and their faces stiffened. Buchinchin's strength was too strong. Nyetian's eyes narrowed slightly. Following which, the 9 dragon veins in his body started to revolve rapidly. Streams of dragon chi gushed out and a wild and explosive force was released. The space was filled with a majestic aura. Roar! In the next instant, a crimson dragon appeared and let out a furious roar, causing the void to tremble. Boundless dragon chi unleashed a terrifying force, causing ripples to form in the air. Rumble! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh! Following which, 2 terrifying forces collided with each other, causing the void to tremble violently. It was as if doomsday had arrived. Nyetian sensed that the space around him was filled with a terrifying power that threatened to tear his body apart. However, he was not afraid at all. Instead, a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back as he dashed towards the sword net. "Lord Nyetian!" Luoho couldn't help but exclaim in shock when he saw Nyetian ignoring the force of the attack and dashing towards the sword net. From his point of view, Nyetian's actions were akin to courting death. Buchinchin couldn't help but frown when he saw Nyetian dashing towards him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh! Nyetian hovered in midair as the violent force of the sword net slammed into his martial physique. Countless wounds appeared on his skin and his entire body was drenched in blood. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Pung pung pung! At the same time, under the impact of the sword net, the body of the giant red dragon started to crumble bit by bit. At the same time that the dragon's body collapsed, a gap also appeared on the massive net of swords. Nyetian ignored the wounds on his body and flapped his wings. Like a ray of light, he dashed towards the sword net. How is this possible? Buchinchin's expression sank when he saw Nyetian breaking through the sword net. He had a bad premonition. Chapter 32-24. Killing Blow. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh! 9 bone-eroding soul-shackling chains whizzed out from the sky. They looked like skeletal snakes as they attacked Buchinchin. Buchinchin sensed the killing intent. His pupils shrank and his face turned pale with fright. However, he was, after all, a Stage 9 pseudo-sage expert with the transcendent sword physique. He reacted in an instant and retracted the surging sword intent in his body, forming a sword intent shield. Bang! The sword essence shield was shattered by the bone-eroding soul shackling chains. Although Bu Qingqian's sword essence was strong, he had condensed the sword essence shield in a hurry. Therefore, the sword essence shield was very weak. However, the sword essence shield weakened the impact of the bone-eroding soul shackling chains. Bang! There was a muffled sound in the void and Bu Qingqian's body was sent flying. Blood splattered in the air. It was a bloody scene. So powerful. The shocking scene caused Shang Lai, Luo Ho, and the others to exclaim, as the astonishment in their hearts reached its peak. They had never expected Nie Tian to be so powerful. Bu Qingqian's body was sent flying for thousands of meters. When he regained his balance, his face was extremely pale and his body was badly mutilated. Although the bone-eroding soul shackling chains did not kill him, they had left 9 bloody holes on his body. Moreover, the bone-eroding soul shackling chains had seeped into his martial body and devoured his blood. Looking at Nie Tian, the wounds on his body were slowly healing. His eyes were extremely cold as he stared at Bu Qingqian like a wolf staring at a sheep. How is this possible? How can your martial body be so powerful? Bu Qingqian looked at Nie Tian in shock. The strength of Nie Tian's martial body had far exceeded his expectations. Even he would have been killed if he had been hit by that kind of violent force just now. However, Nie Tian was able to use his martial body to resist the impact of the sword web. It was too terrifying. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Bu Qingqian would not have believed that there was such a powerful martial artist in the world. At this moment, Nie Tian was only a rank 4 pseudo-sage. If he grew to a rank 9 pseudo-sage, wouldn't his martial body be even stronger than a sage's? Nie Tian charged through the sword net in order to catch Bu Qingqian off guard. His combat power was not as strong as Bu Qingqian, but his martial body was stronger than Bu Qingqian. He had relied on the advantage of his martial body to trade blows with Bu Qingqian. He could endure the same blow, but Bu Qingqian couldn't. Bu Qingqian, I've already said that I don't want to kill you. At this time, Nie Tian opened his mouth and said coldly, but you're unwilling to forgive me and want to kill me. Then don't blame me. What do you want to do? When Bu Qingqian sensed the killing intent in Nie Tian's eyes, his pupils shrank and his voice trembled. What do you think? Nie Tianling laughed. The wounds on his body had already healed. He took a step forward and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Lord Nie Tian wants to kill Bu Qingqian? Luo Ho, who was on the ground, couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Nie Tian could indeed kill Bu Qingqian right now, but would it be wise for him to do so? Bu Qingqian was ranked 6th among the 9 princes and had a powerful family backing him. On the other hand, Nie Tian was just a martial artist from an unknown branch. The difference in status was too great. If Nie Tian killed Bu Qingqian and news of this got out, would he still be able to establish himself in the Myriad Domain Guild? Luo Ho was even worried that Nie Tian would kill them after killing Bu Qingqian. He had already seen that Nie Tian's methods were not inferior to Bu Qingqian's. Brother Nie Tian, you can't kill him. At that moment, Shang Lai also called out, Brat, you are Nie Tian, right? You can't kill me. I am the young master of the Green Peak branch. If you kill me, the entire Myriad Domain Guild will not let you off. Bu Qingqian looked at Nie Tian and said calmly, Humph. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched and he smiled coldly. The coldness in his eyes deepened. Bu Qingqian, I gave you a chance to live, but you didn't cherish it. After saying that, his figure flickered and appeared only a few dozen meters away from Bu Qingqian. At this moment, Bu Qingqian hesitated. The killing intent enveloped him and made it difficult for him to breathe. Nie Tian, you can't. Bu Qingqian's face turned red and ugly. He couldn't even speak. I will kill you like a dog. Nie Tianling laughed. His eyes darkened and a sword intent shot out, aiming for Bu Qingqian's throat. Stop. However, right at that moment, a deep voice suddenly rang out. Immediately afterwards, an enormous hand appeared in the sky, rumbling as it smashed down towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian felt a sense of pressure. He turned around and stabbed his sword. The sword's shadow was like a dragon, resisting the huge hand in the sky. Feng Wanhong save! Buqingshan suddenly raised his head and saw a black-robed figure in the void. His eyes trembled, and he was extremely happy. However, before he could finish his sentence, his throat was pierced by the sword will. His eyes trembled a few times, and his life force directly disappeared. His body fell from the sky. The sixth-ranked young master of the 9 princes died just like that. Boom! At the same time, 2 forces collided in the sky and the impact spread in all directions. Nie Tian retreated dozens of meters. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth and his face was pale. After he steadied himself, he raised his head and saw a man in black appear in the sky. The man's cold eyes were fixed on him, and he was suppressing his anger. The man in black looked very young. He should be younger than Buqingshan. However, his aura was terrifying. It was stronger than Xian Su's and sharper than Buqingshan's. Nie Tian had been injured in the fight with Buqingshan. Moreover, the man in black had attacked him suddenly. It was not surprising that he was injured. Why do you want to kill Buqingshan? At this moment, the man in black moved. He took a step forward and the space seemed to tremble. The space around him seemed to be pulled and tightened. The atmosphere was so oppressive that it was suffocating. He can kill me. Why can't I kill him? Nie Tian frowned and replied coldly. Even if the man in black was strong, he was not afraid. He killed you. The man in black sneered and said, What I saw was that you didn't stop after you injured him. You wanted to kill him. Is it true that in your eyes, killing is the only thing that counts as strength? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. It seemed that the man in black thought that he was a bloodthirsty person. You are Feng Wanhong. At this moment, Shang Lai, who had been stunned for a long time, looked at the man in black. He suddenly reacted and shouted excitedly. Feng Wanhong? Luo Ho was surprised and said, Feng Wanhong, the second-ranked young master of the 9 princes? Chapter 32-25. When Nie Tian heard Shang Lai and Luo Ho mention the black-clothed cultivator's name, Feng Wanhong, his first thought was that the black-clothed cultivator was from the Feng clan. He already knew that the Feng clan held a high position in the Myriad Domain Guild. Moreover, Feng Wanhong was ranked second among the 9 young masters, so he was most likely from the Feng clan. High up in the sky, Feng Wanhong swept his cold gaze over Shang Lai and Luo Ho. He did not speak. Instead, he fixed his gaze on Nie Tian and said, You killed Buqingshan. What else do you have to say? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He smiled faintly and said, What do you want me to say? Should I let Buqingshan kill me just because he wanted to kill me? Buqingshan was already heavily injured earlier. How could he kill you? Feng Wanhong's gaze darkened as he growled cold. He firmly believed that Nie Tian's bloodthirstiness had led to Buqingshan's death. Actually, he did not have much of a friendship with Buqingshan. However, he did not like how Nie Tian could remain so calm after killing him. I already explained to you. Buqingshan wanted to kill me first. I had no choice but to attack. Nie Tian said gravely. If I had lost the battle just now, Buqingshan would not have let me off either. Nonsense. Feng Wanhong's expression darkened. He growled, You killed Buqingshan and still want to quibble. A cruel person like you should not live. You want to kill me? Nie Tian frowned and his expression darkened. Yes. Feng Wanhong's eyes flashed with a cold murderous intent as he nodded. Young Master Wanhong, you've misunderstood. Buqingshan killed young Master Xian Su first, and then tried to kill all of us. Brother Nie Tian couldn't stand it anymore, so he made a move. Seeing that Feng Wanhong was about to make a move, Shang Lai instantly grew nervous and shouted. Buqingshan killed Xian Su? Feng Wanhong's expression darkened when he heard Shang Lai's words. Xian Su was the same as Buqingshan. They were both 9 princes, but he was actually killed by Bu Qingchen. This was something that Feng Wanhong had never expected. In the next moment, Feng Wanhong's gaze turned cold as he looked at Shang Lai and asked, "Who are you?" Shang Lai calmed down, bowed slightly, and said, "I am Shang from the Yunyang branch. You just said that Bu Qingchen killed Xian Su. Is that true?" Feng Wanhong's eyes became even gloomier as he asked in a cold tone. "I saw it with my own eyes. It's absolutely true." Shang Lai nodded heavily and said, "The martial practitioners of the Spirit Jade branch, where young Master Xian Su is from, and the martial practitioners of the Profound Firmament branch, where his cousin Hua Qingdong is from, have all seen it. They can all testify." Feng Wanhong's face suddenly sank. He looked at Nie Tian and couldn't help but say in his heart, "Did I really blame him wrongly?" Nie Tian stood in place, not saying a word. He didn't want to explain too much to Feng Wanhong, as it would seem like he had really done something wrong. "Nie Tian, even if Bu Qingchen wanted to kill you, you shouldn't have tried to kill him after severely injuring him." After a while, Feng Wanhong looked at Nie Tian and said, "I am acquainted with Bu Qingchen. He has always been very upright in front of me. He doesn't seem like a cruel, murderous person." Nie Tian couldn't help but sneer when he heard Feng Wanhong's words. Feng Wanhong was ranked 2nd among the 9 great young masters, while Bu Qingchen was only ranked 6th. Of course, Bu Qingchen wouldn't dare to be arrogant in front of Feng Wanhong. Feng Wanhong seemed very strong, but he knew nothing about the dangers of the world and the unfathomable nature of people. Nie Tian guessed that Feng Wanhong must have been cultivating in seclusion for too long, so his brain had become rigid. "What are you laughing at?" Feng Wanhong's face sank when he saw Nie Tian suddenly laugh. He asked coldly, "I would like to ask young Master Wanhong, when was the last time you saw Bu Qingchen?" Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked in a calm tone. "I've been in seclusion for 10,000 years. The last time I saw Bu Qingchen was more than 10,000 years ago." Feng Wanhong glanced at Nie Tian with a doubtful expression, but he still answered, 10,000 years. Nie Tian couldn't help but smile again. "Do you know how long 10,000 years is and how much can be changed in 10,000 years? You have no idea what kind of person Bu Qingchen is. I won't explain anything to you. If you still want to kill me, then let's fight. I, Nie Tian, am not afraid of you. QL11, Feng Wanhong's eyes flickered when he sensed Nie Tian's aura and the determination in his eyes. His heart was filled with astonishment. At this moment, he felt that Nie Tian was not a cruel and murderous person. A person like that would not have such a righteous aura. Nie Tian, I'll believe you for now, but we will have to be together from now on. When we leave the Tianxing mountain range, I will bring you to the disciplinary hall for interrogation. Feng Wanhong's eyes darkened after some thought. Sure. The corner of Nie Tian's lips curled up into a faint smile. Feng Wanhong's strength was not bad, so it would be a good thing if he followed them. Seeing that both Feng Wanhong and Nie Tian had calmed down, Shang Lai and the others felt as if a heavy stone had been lifted from their hearts. Young Master Wanhong, let's go. Nie Tian glanced at the dense forest in the distance and said with a faint smile. The Ghost Emperor had already broken the killing formation in the forest during the battle earlier, so they could enter now. You want to enter the Tianxing Forbidden Ground? Feng Wanhong asked with a frown. Forbidden Ground? Nie Tian was also startled. He stared at the forest in front of him and laughed. Could it be that there are some secrets hidden in this forest? The forest in front of you is the Tianxing Forbidden Formation. It was set up by the elders of the Myriad Domain Association. Behind the formation is the forbidden ground of the Tianxing mountain range. No one is allowed to enter. Feng Wanhong said solemnly. Nie Tian's gaze sharpened. He was even more curious as to what secrets lay behind the Tianxing Forbidden Formation. What if I insist on entering? Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he looked at Feng Wanhong. The purple-robed woman's aura disappeared into the forest. It was obvious that she had entered. There was an indescribable relationship between the purple-robed woman and the heaven and earth sacred vein. Nye Tian believed that as long as he found the purple-robed woman, he would be able to find the heaven and earth sacred vein. No. Feng Wanhong's expression darkened when he saw that Nye Tian was really going to enter the Tian Xing forbidden formation. He growled, "No one is allowed to enter the Tian Xing forbidden ground without the president's permission." Nye Tian frowned. He didn't expect that Feng Wanhong would actually stop him from entering the Tian Xing forbidden ground. "Lord Nye Tian, I think it's better if we don't go in." Luoho saw that the atmosphere had suddenly become tense, so he hurried to Nye Tian's side and whispered, "Why?" Nye Tian was stunned for a moment and asked in return, "You see." Luoho looked at Feng Wanhong with a troubled expression. He didn't know what to say. "Save me." At this time, a mournful cry for help suddenly came from afar. What followed was a blood-curdling scream. Nye Tian and Feng Wanhong's expressions changed at the same time as they exchanged glances. Feng Wanhong didn't hesitate. His figure moved and he flew towards the place where the scream was coming from. Nye Tian thought for a moment and also followed. Chapter 32-26. Feng Wanhong and Nye Tian arrived one after the other and saw the masked martialist in the air. What a strong murderous intent! Feng Wanhong's eyes trembled as he looked at the masked martialist. He could not help but exclaim inwardly. A terrifying murderous aura surged from the body of the masked martialist. It was sharp and cold, as if it could tear everything to shreds. As he stood there, the surrounding space was filled with a terrifying murderous aura. It was as if his entire being was a murderous abyss. Nye Tian could not help but narrow his eyes in shock. He could sense a strong dangerous aura from the masked martialist. He had never felt such a feeling before, even when he was in front of Kuyo Oniguchi. "Kill!" At this moment, the masked martialist suddenly roared like thunder, like the roar of a wild beast. A strong murderous aura surged wildly between heaven and earth. Boom! 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 A strong aura appeared from his body in the next instant. It was as if thousands of demons were dancing wildly. Terrifying demonic claws appeared and attacked the crowd below. On the ground, dozens of martial artists were fleeing in panic. However, the demonic claws had locked onto them and were attacking them. Following that, the demonic claws descended, and miserable screams resounded. The scene was extremely tragic and bloody. Nye Tian frowned and his expression changed. He recognized that the martialists who were being slaughtered were the martialists from the Lingyu and mysterious firmament branches. It seemed like they had not run far before the masked martialist chased them all the way here. Bastard! Feng Wanhong's eyes trembled when he saw the scene before him. He roared and his aura burst out like thunder. He could not believe that there could be such a violent person in the world, killing people as if it was child's play. Boom! The instant Feng Wanhong's aura erupted, a terrifying snowstorm appeared around his body. Following that, a horrifying icy chi surged out like a tsunami. Countless sharp ice spikes appeared, covering the sky and the ground, killing everything in their path as they charged at the masked cultivator. The grim-faced cultivator could not help but frown when he felt the cold chi pressing down on him. He muttered with a smile, "Are the ants of the realms this strong?" Nye Tian's eyes trembled slightly as he looked at Feng Wanhong. He did not expect the latter's strength to be so terrifying. However, what surprised him even more were the words of the masked martial artist. Realm ants? QL11, could it be that the grimace martial artist wasn't from the realm? Boom! Chi. Right at this moment, the masked cultivator raised his arm, and a terrifying demonic claw appeared, directly shattering the ice that filled the sky. Feng Wanhong's figure was pushed back 1,000 meters by the impact of the berserk energy. He looked extremely miserable. Seeing this scene, Nye Tion's expression couldn't help but change, and he was extremely shocked. Feng Wanhong's strength was already close to peak false sacred realm. He was not much weaker than Kuyo Oniguchi and the others, yet he was knocked back by the masked cultivator with a single palm strike. The masked cultivator's battle strength was terrifying. Could this masked man be a Sage Realm martial artist? Nye Tion's eyes trembled, and he was secretly shocked. The masked cultivator had already made it clear that he was not from the realms, so it was not surprising that his strength had reached the Sage Realm. However, if he was a Sage Realm martial artist, it would be troublesome. Ah! Right at this moment, a series of miserable cries came from the ground below. Dozens of martial artists were instantly killed by the demonic claw. You deserve to die. Feng Wanhong's expression suddenly changed when he saw this, and his veins popped out. He roared like thunder, and his entire body was filled with rage. Streams of cold chi were released, and the space within a radius of tens of thousands of meters instantly became cold. It was as though the world was about to be frozen. Realm Ant, are you angry? The masked cultivator looked at Feng Wanhong and smiled coldly, his eyes cold. It was obvious that he did not take Feng Wanhong seriously at all. He only treated the latter as an ant. At this moment, Shang Lai and the others arrived. When they saw the scene in the sky, they were so shocked that they could not speak. Brother Shang, step back. Nye Tian suddenly turned around and asked Shang Lai and the others to leave. The battle between Feng Wanhong and the masked cultivator shook heaven and earth, and the surrounding space became extremely dangerous. Kill! Feng Wanhong's aura condensed in the sky, and he roared like a wild beast. He slammed his palm down, and suddenly, a sharp ice blade appeared and slashed at the masked cultivator. Swoosh! Crack, crack, crack! At this moment, the space became extremely cold. Everywhere the ice blade passed, the space was frozen, and a terrifying cold chi filled every corner of the sky. What a terrifying cold chi! Nye Tian frowned, and he was shocked. Feng Wanhong's strength was stronger than he had imagined. Ant, you're seeking death. The masked cultivator narrowed his eyes as he looked at Feng Wanhong, and a cold intent surged out. Then, he directly sent out a palm strike, and a black light appeared in the void. It did not look strong, but its aura seemed endless, as if it could devour everything. In my eyes, the cultivators of any realm are like ants. As for ants, they are meant to be trampled. They cannot resist. The masked cultivator sneered, and his cold laughter reverberated in the space. Immediately, the world seemed like it would collapse. Disdain surged in his eyes, and he looked like a peerless king, looking down on everything. How is this possible? When Nye Tian saw this scene, he could not help being stunned, and he cried out in his heart. He sensed that the masked cultivator's strength was the same as Feng Wanhong's, a rank 9 pseudo-sage. However, the masked cultivator's aura was far stronger than Feng Wanhong's. Moreover, the power that the masked cultivator released seemed to have a strong suppressive effect on Feng Wanhong. Sage-ranked martial technique. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice rang out, and he exclaimed, "This fellow is using a sage-ranked martial technique. He really isn't from the realm." When Nye Tian heard the Ghost Emperor's words, his expression immediately sank. No wonder the masked cultivator was so strong. It turned out that he had used a sage-ranked martial technique. In a battle between cultivators, apart from strength and talent, the strength of the martial technique was also crucial. In a situation where both sides' strength was similar, the cultivator who grasped a higher martial technique would obviously have an absolute advantage. Feng Wanhong's aura did not lose to the masked cultivator, but his martial technique was clearly incomparable to the masked cultivator. Boom! Crack, crack, crack! At this moment, the black light in the sky suddenly exploded like a flower blooming. It actually condensed into a sinister demonic claw and forcefully bombarded the ice blade. Immediately, A cracking sound came out from the void. The ice blade was directly torn apart by the demonic claw. In the next instant, a black light appeared and attacked Feng Wanhong. Chapter 32:27. Who's the ant? Realm Ant Die. The masked cultivator's cold voice rang out in the sky, sinister and arrogant. As long as that black light landed, Feng Wanhong would definitely die. Heavenly sword reverses the sun. However, right at this moment, a low and deep furious roar sounded out, and then a figure charged into the sky. The figure hadn't arrived yet, but the sword image had, and it forcefully shattered the annihilation black light and saved Feng Wanhong's life. Feng Wanhong's eyes trembled as he looked at the silver-haired figure in the distance in shock. He had not expected the person who made a move at the critical moment to be Nie Tian. He had not expected Nie Tian to be able to block the masked cultivator's attack. Huh! The masked cultivator could not help but be stunned by this sudden scene. His expression instantly turned sinister, and his eyes glared at Nie Tian like a venomous wolf. He could no longer control his rage and killing intent. However, when he sensed Nie Tian's strength, his expression was instantly replaced by shock. The strength of a rank 4 pseudo-sage? The masked cultivator could not believe his eyes. The person who blocked his attack was actually a rank 4 pseudo-sage cultivator. A rank 4 pseudo-sage cultivator from a realm had blocked the attack of a rank 9 pseudo-sage cultivator from the sacred world. Was this possible? Ant, who are you? In the next moment, the masked cultivator calmed down. His eyes turned extremely gloomy as if he wanted to swallow Nie Tian whole. The person who will kill you. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and his eyes turned extremely cold. He spat out those 3 words coldly, his killing intent seemingly solid and extremely sharp. Kill me! The masked cultivator's eyes sank, and then he laughed wildly. He shouted in disdain, "A mere rank 4 pseudo-sage realm ant wants to kill me? What a joke!" The arrogant laughter showed that the masked cultivator did not take Nie Tian seriously at all. With his status and strength, there was indeed no need for him to take Nie Tian seriously. "Ant, do you really think that you have the ability to fight me just because you blocked one of my moves? You'll soon know that ants are destined to be trampled." The grimace cultivator laughed maniacally. His aura surged crazily, transforming into berserk demonic power that filled the sky, attacking the void. Humph! The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. He smiled cold and said, "You call others ants, then what are you? Today, I'll let you know that even ants have dignity, and that ants will resist. Today, I will step on your head and let you have a taste of what it feels like to be trampled by an ant." The deep voice was insolent and ruthless. At this moment, Nie Tian was really angry. This grim-faced cultivator kept calling Shao Chun an ant, not stopping. It was as if, in his eyes, the people of the realms were ants that he could trample on at will. Today, he, Nie Tian, would let the grim-faced cultivator understand that even an ant had its own dignity and must resist. "Ant, you're courting death." The grim-faced cultivator stared at Nie Tian blankly for a moment before he reacted. With a roar, he released a berserk power. Endless demonic chi surged toward Nie Tian like a tsunami. 9 limits of the starry sky, sky slash. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he released his sword intent in an instant. The starry sky slashed out, and a terrifying sword shadow rushed toward the endless demonic chi. At the same time, his figure also rushed over. Nie Tian. Feng Wanhong's eyes trembled when he saw this scene, and he exclaimed in shock. He had never imagined that Nie Tian would be so ferocious. Nie Tian was shrouded in demonic chi in midair, and countless bloody wounds appeared on his body. The demonic chi looked vigorous, but it was actually very sharp. At that moment, Nie Tian felt as if he were being torn apart by countless sharp blades, and his whole body was on the verge of falling apart. "Fool, you only have the strength of a rank 4 pseudo-sage. How dare you rush into my demonic chi? You're courting death. The grim-faced cultivator roared violently. The demonic chi in the surrounding space contained a terrifying strangulation power. Even a rank 9 pseudosage cultivator would not be able to withstand it, let alone Nietian, who had the strength of a rank 4 pseudosage. Boom. However, before he could finish laughing, a sword shadow broke through the demonic chi and whistled out. Bang! Caught off guard, the grim-faced cultivator was sent flying. Although he was not injured, he was in a sorry state. In the next moment, Nietian's figure broke through the demonic chi, and his sword intense soared into the sky like a heaven-defying giant sword, sharp and terrifying. You! The grim-faced cultivator looked at Nietian in horror. Nietian, who was a rank 4 pseudosage, actually broke through the demonic chi. How was this possible? Is this all you've got? Nietianling sneered. His eyes were cold and filled with disdain as he said loudly, Now tell me, who's the real ant here? Damn it! The grim-faced cultivator's eyes flickered and he let out a roar. He suddenly reached out his hand, and a boundless demonic chi appeared. Following it, a black ray was fired, which tore the space apart and attacked Nietian. Boom! The terrifying black ray turned into a giant beast of darkness that pounced at Nietian fiercely. Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he reacted instantly. He slashed out with his sword, and a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back as he retreated. However, he was still a step too late, and a bloody wound was left on his chest. Nietian. Feng Wanhong's eyes trembled when he saw this, and he exclaimed. He was defeated by the grim-faced cultivator with a single move, and his martial heart was on the verge of collapsing. However, seeing that Nietian, who was only a 4th-grade false saint, was actually fighting back, his blood boiled with excitement. Ant, how are you going to fight me with your strength? The grim-faced cultivator let out a cold laugh and roared furiously. Is that so? Nietianling let out a cold laugh, and his blood chi surged. The sword intent surrounding him became extremely sharp, as if it was going to tear everything apart. Burning his blood chi, activating his sword intent, and pushing his martial physique to the limit, Nietian was going to unleash an even greater force. Nietian, I'll fight alongside you. Feng Wanhong's blood boiled when he saw this. He let out a deep roar, and the icy chi around his body surged like a raging tsunami. Humph! 2 ants together are still ants. The grim-faced cultivator's gaze was extremely cold as he yelled in a deep voice. He had underestimated Nietian's strength, which was why he ended up in such a sorry state. But now, he was serious, so Nietian and Feng Wanhong had no chance. Sky-devouring blood kill. At this moment, Nietian let out a low roar, and his figure instantly moved like a shocking rainbow. The blood-colored sword whistled through the air, and the entire area was filled with the smell of blood. Kill! At the same time, Feng Wanhong's voice sounded out, and it was furious like thunder. An icy blade tore through space, and it was extremely murderous. Chapter 32-28. Side by side. Boom. Boom. High up in the sky, the crimson sword shadow and the icy blade slashed out at the same time. Heaven and earth trembled, and the scene was bloody and somber. Humph! Ants will always be ants. Their strength is only SOSO. The masked cultivator was not afraid of Nietian and Feng Wanhong's joint attack. Instead, he sneered, and the aura around his body surged slowly. He was like a sleeping beast that would explode with terrifying strength in the next moment. Boom! In the next instant, just as the crimson sword shadow and the icy blade were about to land, the masked cultivator released the demonic aura around him. Suddenly, a huge demonic shadow appeared and the void trembled. Rumble! Rumble! The crimson sword shadow and the icy blade landed at the same time, but they shattered directly. Under the protection of the demonic shadow, the masked cultivator was unscathed. On the other hand, Nietian and Feng Wanhong were pushed back thousands of meters by the huge impact. After the two stabilized themselves, their faces were as pale as paper, and blood flowed from the corners of their mouth. The two exchanged glances, their expressions ugly. The masked cultivator's strength had exceeded their expectations. 2 ants, is this your strength? Is this your resistance? The masked cultivator sneered, and the demonic shadow around him expanded, reaching 10,000 meters in an instant. The void was stretched taut, as though it was about to be torn apart. Shang Lai and the rest were tens of thousands of meters away. When they saw the scene in the void, they were dumbfounded, unable to believe their eyes. It was hard to imagine that the masked cultivator's strength was actually this strong. The Tianqing mountain range was originally only open to the cultivators of the Myriad Domain Guild. Why was the masked cultivator able to enter? Who was the masked cultivator, and why did he appear in the Tianqing mountain range? A series of questions arose, and no one could understand. Perhaps the masked cultivator was related to the purple-clad woman and the sacred veins. 2 ants die. Just at this moment, the grim-faced cultivator roared, and the demonic figure instantly moved. The heavens and earth trembled, and a terrifying force appeared, like a raging wave, pressing down on Nie Tian and Feng Wanhong. The ultimate killing move of the proud sword tactics, the soul of heaven, the soul of heaven, the soul of heaven, the unyielding soul, God-destroying blow, burning the world. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. What emerged in his eyes was not fear, but a strong desire to fight. Ice Universe Art, 9 Dragon Ice Eye. At the same time, Feng Wanhong roared furiously while the icy cold energy in his entire body rose to the limit, and then he slapped out furiously with his palm, causing the heavens and the earth to tremble. Boom! Boom, boom, boom! In the next instant, a 10,000-meter-long crimson sword and 9-headed ice dragon appeared in the sky at the same time. In a battle of life and death, victory and defeat could be decided in an instant. Nie Tian and Feng Wanhong naturally wouldn't hold back any longer, and they could only fight with all their strength. 2 ants, I have underestimated your strength, but ants will always be ants. You will never be able to overturn the heavens. The grim-faced cultivator looked at Nie Tian and Feng Wanhong and laughed cold. The demonic figure around him moved, and the violent momentum was like thousands of demons dancing wildly, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Boom, boom, boom! In the next instant, the demonic figure slapped down with his palm, and there was a sound like a tsunami, as if the mountains and rivers were tumbling, and the heavens and earth were collapsing. Boom, boom, boom! Immediately, 3 extremely violent forces collided together, and the void tumbled like boiling water. The whole world seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Chi, chi, chi! The terrifying power formed endless waves in the sky, crashing into the void. The endless power clashed together. It was extremely terrifying. After a moment, the crimson sword and 9-headed ice dragon collapsed at the same time, and it was extremely tragic. Bang! Bang! In the void, there were 2 muffled sounds, and the figures of Nie Tian and Feng Wanhong flew out at the same time, leaving 2 streaks of blood in the air. On the other hand, the grim-faced cultivator was as stable as Mount Tai, not moving at all. Nie Tian and Feng Wanhong stabilized their bodies, and their bodies were already dripping with blood, and their faces were extremely pale. The grim-faced cultivator's demonic figure was too strong. After the violent momentum erupted, it was like a mountain or a sea, unshakable. Nie Tian, this person's martial technique is too powerful. The demonic figure's momentum is not much weaker than that of a Sage Realm cultivator. Your only chance now is to attack the demonic figure and get close to him. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded, reminding Nie Tian. Use the advantage of your martial body to defeat him. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he immediately understood the Ghost Emperor's meaning. If it was a head-on fight, even if Nie Tian and Feng Wanhong joined forces, they would not be a match for the grim-faced cultivator. However, once they got close, Nie Tian's martial body was strong enough to threaten the grim-faced cultivator. Even if the grim-faced cultivator cultivated sage-ranked martial techniques and sage-ranked martial techniques, his martial body might not be as strong as Nie Tian's. As long as Nie Tian could get within 10 meters of the grim-faced cultivator, his chances of victory would be very high. 2 Ants, your strength has exceeded my expectations. Unfortunately, you are realm cultivators, lowly existences. You will never be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with me. The grim-faced cultivator's voice resounded in the void, filled with disdain and mockery. He had a very high opinion of himself, and viewed the martial practitioners of the realms as ants. My next palm strike will take your lives. Following that, the grim-faced cultivator roared, and the demonic figure instantly moved. A palm strike ruthlessly slammed down, and a violent force descended from the sky, covering the sky and earth. The world shook as if it was going to collapse. Feng Wanhong felt the boundless pressure, and his eyes involuntarily trembled. His face was filled with unconcealable fear. At this moment, he looked at Nie Tian. The latter had a resolute expression, as if he did not know what fear was. Feng Wanhong could not imagine how a person's temperament could be so strong. Facing a cultivator stronger than him, he showed no fear. Feng Wanhong, you have been in seclusion for 10,000 years to become a strong cultivator, not an ant that can be trampled by others. Now show me your true strength. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly spoke. His deep voice resounded in the void like thunder, rumbling in Feng Wanhong's ears. Feng Wanhong was ranked second among the 9 princes. He had been in seclusion for 10,000 years to become a strong cultivator, not an ant. Nie Tian's words were like thunder, awakening Feng Wanhong completely. Feng Wanhong, cover me! In the next moment, Nie Tian spoke again. Immediately, astral soul wings appeared on his back and spread out. They were nearly 1,000 meters long, as dazzling as falling stars. Even the most terrifying darkness could not conceal such a radiance. Whoosh! Then, the astral soul wings on Nie Tian's back suddenly vibrated. His figure was like an arrow released from a bow, rushing towards the demonic figure. Nie Tian. Feng Wanhong's eyes trembled. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would directly rush over? However, his reaction was very fast. The cold chi around his body instantly surged, condensing into a huge ice dragon that whistled out, blocking Nie Tian's head like a shield. Chapter 32-29. Stomp! Ant, go to hell! The grim-faced cultivator roared in rage and sent out a palm strike. Space trembled violently as if it was about to shatter. Kaboom! Bang! In the next moment, the violent demon chi fell. The frost dragon could not withstand it and crumbled, turning into cold air and dissipating. Roar! However, at this time, another dragon roared and another ice dragon appeared, attacking the endless demon chi. Roar! 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 Following that, an even more terrifying dragon roar sounded. A total of 7 ice dragons appeared and attacked the demon chi, buying time for Nie Tian. Feng Wanhong did not hesitate to ignite his blood chi to form 9 ice dragons to protect Nie Tian. He did not know what Nie Tian was going to do, but this was all he could do for Nie Tian. He had already reached his limit. Ant, you overestimate yourself. The grim-faced cultivator roared angrily. The gigantic palm of the demon shadow fell, and a violent roar sounded in the air. One by one, the ice dragons collapsed. Feng Wanhong's figure was sent flying. Fresh blood sprayed into the air. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying demonic palm appeared and was about to land on Nie Tian's body. Even though Nie Tian's martial body was strong, he could not withstand such a terrifying palm. In the distance, Shang Lai, Luo Ho, and the others watched this scene with trembling eyes. Boom! At this moment, between life and death, Nie Tian's body shook, and an endless amount of dragon chi gushed out. In the sea of dragon chi, the figure of a crimson dragon appeared, and the vast dragon might surged into the void, incomparably terrifying. Huh! The moment the crimson dragon appeared, the grim-faced cultivator felt the terrifying power. He could not help but squint his eyes and exclaim, "Boom! Hum!" In the next moment, the demon shadow's gigantic palm landed and the void roared. Then, a low rumble sounded. The crimson dragon had blocked the powerful attack. The demonic shadow's huge body swayed and stagnated for a moment. At this moment, Nyetian had already rushed over. His demonic eye opened, and a sharp blade formed from pure ocular force whizzed out. The sharpness of the blade spread out, and the void seemed to be directly torn apart. What aura is this? The grim-faced cultivator instantly felt a dangerous aura appear, causing his eyes to tremble involuntarily as he exclaimed in shock. Crack! At this moment, the eye power blade landed on the demonic shadow and tore a hole in it. This is the moment! A fervent light flashed in Nyetian's eyes. He was pleasantly surprised. The wings on his back flapped, and he became like a beam of light, piercing through the demonic figure and instantly closing in on the masked cultivator. What do you want? When the masked cultivator saw Nyetian charging over like a ferocious beast, his eyes trembled as he shouted, "I'll kill you!" The corners of Nyetian's mouth twitched as he spat out two words coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. "You think you can do that?" The grim-faced cultivator instantly calmed down and growled, "Do you think you can kill me just because you're close to me? I'm a rank 9 pseudo-sacred expert with a strong martial body. How can a rank 4 pseudo-sacred ant like you compare to me?" By this time, the grim-faced cultivator had already understood Nyetian's plan, but he remained very calm. He did not think that Nyetian's martial experience was stronger than his. "Is that so?" Nyetianling sneered. His figure moved in an instant and directly arrived less than 10 meters away from the grim-faced cultivator. Boom! In the next instant, he directly punched out. Pure and terrifying power erupted from his martial body. The instant the fist shadow whizzed, he was already face to face with the grim-faced cultivator. The grim-faced cultivator's eyes trembled. He did not expect Nyetian to really dare to rush over. In a hurry, he raised his arm and punched out. Bang! The two fists collided and sparks flew in all directions. The crisp sound of metal and stone colliding could be heard in the air. It was as if it was not two fists colliding but steel. At Nyetian and the grim-faced cultivator's level, the physical body of a martial artist was already stronger than metal and stone. Immediately, the grim-faced cultivator took a few steps back, but Nyetian did not move at all. Instead, he took a step forward and punched out again. "You!" The grim-faced cultivator cried out in horror, his eyes filled with disbelief. The strength of Nyetian's martial body far exceeded his expectations. He dared not believe it. Was the person fighting with him at this moment really a rank 4 pseudo-sacred expert? Crack! Nyetian's punch landed directly on the grim-faced cultivator's chest, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard in the air. With the power of one punch, Nyetian smashed the grim-faced cultivator's sternum. The grim-faced cultivator retreated a few meters, his eyes trembling with horror. Could the silver-haired cultivator standing in front of him be a monster? "This is your strength?" The killing intent in Nyetian's eyes soared, terrifying, and he said in a cold voice, "If you say I'm an ant, then what are you? Aren't you worse than an ant?" At the same time, Nyetian's figure moved again at the same time, punching out with both fists, whistling with the wind, fierce like a wild beast. He had grasped the initiative, of course. He would not give the grim-faced cultivator a chance to rest. Bang! 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 Then, a series of muffled sounds came out, and Nyetian's fists bombarded the grim-faced cultivator like a rainstorm. "Just because we're from the realm, we're ants? Just because you're from the holy realm, you can be high and mighty? In your eyes, the martial artists of the realm are all trash, all dregs, right?" Nyetian roared as he punched, each punch hitting the flesh, incomparably ferocious. The grim-faced cultivator was forced to retreat again and again, his body dripping with blood, countless bones broken. Today, I'll let you know. Even ants have dignity, will resist, and will have their moments of defiance. And you arrogant upper-class people will also be trampled by ants one day. Nye Tian roared like thunder, clenching his fists tightly and punching at the grim-faced cultivator's mask. Bang! In the next instant, the mask directly shattered, revealing a terrified, horrified, and bloody face. The face was very young, very handsome, but at the moment it was very ugly. The bones in his body were broken, but the pain in his body was far less than the pain in his heart. In his eyes, Nye Tian had always been an ant-like existence, but now he was being humiliated by this ant. This feeling of humiliation was driving him crazy. However, Nye Tian's tyranny was not over, it had just begun. High and mighty, is it? I'll let you have a taste of what it feels like to be trampled by others. With a bellow, Nye Tian leaped into the air, took a step forward, and stomped down on the grim-faced martial artist's head. You! The grim-faced cultivator's eyes widened and his face stiffened. He did not expect Nye Tian to really dare to trample on him. Nye Tian's gaze was as cold as steel, and extremely firm. So what if you're a realm cultivator? So what if you're a 9th-grade pseudo-sacred? I, Nye Tian, will trample on this kind of arrogant scum. How dare you? At that instant, a low roar echoed in the sky, and a black-robed figure appeared in the distance, flying over at an incredible speed. Chapter 32:30. Nye Tian looked up into the sky. A grimacing martialist appeared in his vision, causing his expression to darken and his expression to change. However, this did not affect his movements at all. He directly stomped his foot heavily on the head of the grimacing martialist. On the head. He stomped on the head of the grimacing martialist. Kaboom! The grimacing martialist felt his head explode as half of his face caved in and became a bloody mess. He spat out a mouthful of blood. The humiliation in his heart had reached its peak. He had never imagined that there would be a day when he would be trampled by a realm martialist. Aren't you high and mighty? Didn't you say that I'm an ant? Didn't you want to crush me? Aren't you very awesome and powerful? Now that I'm stepping on your head, do you still dare to be arrogant in front of me? Nye Tian growled like a wild beast. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stomped even harder. The grimacing martialist's face had already become distorted. In the distance, Feng Wanhong, Shang Lai, Luo Ho, Shang Nana, and the others watched this scene with stiff expressions. They could not believe their eyes at all. Nye Tian, a realm martialist with the strength of a 4th-order pseudo-sacred, was actually trampling on a 9th-order pseudo-sacred powerhouse from the sacred world. This was not just trampling on the face of the grimacing martialist, but it was also trampling on his dignity and martial heart. This guy is so scary. Feng Wanhong's heart trembled as he looked at the current Nye Tian. Not only was Nye Tian strong, but he also seemed to have a terrifying demonic nature in his heart. A genius from the sacred world? What a joke! Nye Tianling laughed continuously as his body surged with a murderous aura. The coldness in his eyes made him look like a demon. Don't kill him! Just at this moment, the cultivator with the ghost mask who had suddenly appeared felt Nye Tian's killing intent from 10,000 meters away. He shouted and immediately attacked, sending out a palm strike. The air rumbled and a sharp light was released. It was extremely sharp and murderous, and it attacked Nye Tian. I will kill him! Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, but he smiled coldly. He stomped down fiercely, and instantly, a bloody mess of flesh and blood appeared. The ghost-faced martial artist under his feet actually had his head forcibly crushed under his foot. QL11 Nye Tian looked down and happened to see the ghastly masked cultivator's eyeballs flying out. His eyes were filled with humiliation, unwillingness, and fear. One could imagine the pain in his heart before he died. After killing the masked cultivator, Nie Tian's figure instantly moved, explosively retreating a kilometer away, dodging the attack of the sharp light in the air. However, he was still affected by the aftershock of the sharp light, and a glaring wound appeared on his chest. However, after Xiao Chun stabilized himself, he did not care about the wound on his chest. Instead, he looked up at the cultivator with the ghost mask in the distance, and his face sank slightly. Even though they were separated by 10,000 meters, he could still clearly feel the wrath of the masked cultivator. That pair of bloodshot eyes seemed to want to tear him to shreds. Bastard! In the next moment, the masked cultivator roared like a wild beast, and took a step forward, causing the void to tremble violently as if it was about to collapse. He could not believe that a martial artist from a realm had actually tortured and killed his companion in front of him. "Ant, do you know who you've just killed? You're dead meat if you dare to touch the people of the 10,000 ghosts flowing together." The masked cultivator roared as he ran wildly. A terrifying killing intent spread in the void, and instantly enveloped Nie Tian. 10,000 ghosts flowing together. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he remembered the name in his heart. This name was obviously the organization that the two masked cultivators were from. However, he did not understand why this organization from the sacred world would appear in the Tianxing mountain range. However, this was clearly not the time to consider this question. Die! In an instant, the masked cultivator charged wildly, and a violent force appeared in the void, blasting towards Nie Tian. It was extremely terrifying. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he slashed out with his sword, and the sword's shadow surged like a dragon, blasting out. Rumble! The violent force fell, and directly shattered the sword's shadow. Bang! Then, with a dull sound, Nie Tian's figure was directly sent flying. Nie Tian! Feng Wanhong saw this scene and exclaimed. The masked cultivator who had just arrived seemed to be even more terrifying than the masked cultivator from before. Moreover, Nie Tian's strength was almost depleted, and coupled with his severe injuries, it was almost impossible for him to fight with this masked cultivator again. Brat, how dare you kill the people of the 10,000 ghosts flowing together? Killing you is already letting you off lightly. The masked cultivator roared like thunder, and once again, he struck out with his palm, and a terrifying palm force burst out, as if tens of thousands of lightning bolts were moving at the same time. It was incomparably violent, and the entire void trembled as if it was about to collapse. The masked cultivator's strength was too strong, and a casual strike from him had the power to destroy the heavens and earth. You realm martial artists are all ants. Ants only deserve to be trampled. The masked cultivator's murderous intent was heavy, and he roared wildly, as if the heavens and earth were about to collapse in an instant. Bullshit! Even the weakest person has to live with dignity. Nie Tian's eyes flickered, and he let out a low roar, and the blood in his body surged. In an instant, his martial body was pushed to the limit, and he raised the starry heavenly slash. The surging sword intent on the blade was incomparably sharp, as if it contained the power to tear through everything. Ants? What was an ant? Even if one's background was lowly, one had to live like a human. If one had no dignity, what was the point of such a life? Buzz! In the next instant, a sonorous sword cry resounded in the void, piercing through the 9 heavens. Suddenly, a terrible sword shadow appeared, and it was like a giant that could support the heavens and earth, and it soared into the sky. Dignity! The masked cultivator sneered, and he roared wildly, "Mere ants don't deserve dignity. I will let you understand how weak your so-called dignity is." As his voice fell, a surging force flowed out of the masked cultivator's body, as if his body was surging with an endless ocean, capable of suppressing everything. Boom! In the next moment, he slammed his palm down, and a terrible force rolled down, pressing down on Nie Tian. The void trembled, and the heavens and earth shook. Boom! Hua, hua, hua. The violent and boundless forces collided, and the space was filled with the sound of an explosion, as if the heavens and earth were about to collapse. Realm Ant, I will let you see how big the gap between you and me is. The masked cultivator roared, and a terrible force spread out of his body, oppressing the void, and rushed toward Nietian. Bloodline power! Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly, and his figure instantly retreated. In the void, he smelled a trace of bloodline aura, which was incomparably surging, like a vast ocean. Boom! Bang bang bang! In the next moment, a terrible force exploded, and the blood-colored sword shadow could no longer withstand it, and it collapsed with a loud bang. Nietian frowned, and the wings on his back shook, and he frantically retreated. At this time, the masked cultivator rushed over, and his whole body's aura was crazy and violent. Die! 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 Chapter 32-31. Swish! Nietian's gaze suddenly trembled. He immediately felt a terrifying aura appear, charging straight at him. The ghost-faced martial artist attacked ruthlessly, clearly not wanting to leave Nietian any chance of survival. Could it be that I have to use the extreme demon annihilation seal? Nietian's heart trembled as his brain spun rapidly. He was not sure what the consequences would be after he used the extreme demon annihilation seal of the demon eye. The power of the extreme demon annihilation seal was extremely strong. It once allowed Nietian to kill a saint with a glance. But behind the powerful power came with a very huge price. Nietian was worried that if he used the extreme demon annihilation seal, it would produce a terrifying backlash. This was what his martial physique could not withstand. And at this moment, he could not use the godfiend body either. Although not long ago, he used the holy demon annihilation power to offset the backlash of the godfiend body. But his martial physique was still not enough to withstand the backlash of the godfiend body. His strongest trump card had an expensive price, so he could not use it. Just at the moment of life and death, Nietian's brows furrowed. Suddenly, he felt a strange power surge in his body. His eyes trembled, and his face was incomparably delighted. Starry Sky 9 limits, 4th limit, star fall. The next moment, the godfiend's sword intent in his body surged out wildly, fusing with the power of the stars, erupting into a terrifying sword shadow. It was like a falling star, releasing a dazzling light. Rumble! In the void, the terrifying power collided together. Heaven and earth were in a miserable state. The berserk power wreaked havoc, surging in the space. Nietian's figure retreated 1,000 meters away before stabilizing. The corners of his mouth twitched, revealing a hint of a smile in addition to the blood. He blocked the ghost-faced martial artist's killing palm. It was truly unbelievable. At the moment of life and death, the 9th level of the Starry Sky 9 limits suddenly unsealed 3 limits. The 4th limit, Starfall, the 5th limit, Moonfall, and the 6th limit, Yang extinguished. Nietian relied on the 4th limit to block the fatal palm. He did not expect that the power of the 4th limit of the Starry Sky 9 limits was actually so shocking. The ghost-faced cultivator froze for a moment, his complexion becoming very strange, his expression filled with incredulity. He could feel that Nietian's strike just now actually contained a strong aura of the saint. QL11 only high-level Sacred World martial skills could release Sacred Aura when they were unleashed. Could it be that a cultivator from Nietian's domain had mastered a saint-grade martial skill? The corners of Nietian's mouth curled up. He was also very surprised. The instant he unleashed the 4th limit, he also felt a different aura. That mysterious feeling made him feel carefree and carefree. Previously, when he used the 9 limits of the Starry Sky, he had always felt that there were some restrictions. But the 4th limit, Starfall, made him feel a sense of openness. In the past, his understanding of the power of the stars had always been limited to a corner. But now that the 9 limits of the Starry Sky had been unsealed, the world in front of him had suddenly expanded. It seems that the starry sky contains the ninth emissary's understanding of the power of the stars. Nyetian frowned and thought to himself. The 9 limits of the starry sky were, of course, left behind by the ninth emissary. Nyetian had been very puzzled. Why did the 9 limits of the starry sky not continue to be unsealed when his strength kept increasing? Only now did he realize that he had underestimated the 9 limits of the starry sky too much. The 9 emissaries of the starry sky were each stronger than the last. Nyetian felt that the 9th emissary of the starry sky's strength, even if he was not as strong as a starry sky absolute saint, should be close. The 9 limits of the starry sky contained the 9th emissary of the starry sky's understanding of the power of the stars, which allowed Nyetian's understanding and use of the power of the stars to another level. How is this possible? The ghost-faced cultivator suddenly felt that Nyetian's aura seemed to have changed. He could not help but exclaim in surprise, his face full of shock. His palm had not only failed to kill Nyetian, but it had also increased Nyetian's aura. What was going on? Boom! At this moment, Nyetian took a step forward, and a terrifying aura gushed out of his body. His whole body was incomparably sharp, as if it was about to explode. This scene made Nyetian's face freeze slightly, and then his eyes trembled in surprise. He had actually broken through. The unsealing of the 9 limits of the starry sky had actually helped him break through. Our battle has just begun. Nyetian's eyes burned, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Coldling spoke, and his whole body bloomed with a sharp light. The unsealing of the 9 limits of the starry sky, coupled with the breakthrough in his strength, had multiplied Nyetian's confidence. At this moment, the injuries all over his body had healed a lot under the impact of the breakthrough in his strength, and his aura had also skyrocketed. Realm Ant, do you think that you can compete with me just because your strength has increased by 1 level? Ridiculous! The ghost-faced martial artist let out a low roar as his aura skyrocketed in an instant. Then, he threw a palm strike at Nyetian, intending to kill. Boom! A terrifying palm shadow whistled through the air, and the world couldn't help but tremble, and the void trembled. This time, the ghost-faced cultivator used an even more powerful force, obviously feeling threatened by Nyetian. Good! Nyetian felt a terrifying force like a tsunami rolling towards him, but not only was he not afraid, but his mouth curved into a smile as he roared wildly. 9 limits of the starry sky, 5th limit moonfall. In the next moment, the starry sky slashed out, and a terrifying force erupted in an instant. In the void, a sharp sword shadow appeared, like a dazzling light rising from the darkness, incomparably dazzling. Boy, you are very good, but unfortunately, in front of me, you are still an ant. The ghost-faced cultivator's eyes narrowed slightly, and he roared loudly. Boom! Pung, pung, pung. Immediately after, the 2 supreme forces collided. The sky turned solemn, and the wind and clouds surged. The sharp sword shadows, under the impact of the endless waves of power, suddenly collapsed. Sword intent spread out in all directions, rushing towards the void. Nyetian's eyes narrowed slightly, and his expression changed. Then, the astral soul wings appeared on his back, and he was directly sent flying backwards. Even so, he was still affected by the terrifying impact, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. On the other side, the ghost-faced cultivator's figure was sent flying backwards like a kite with a broken string, drawing a line of blood in the air. How is this possible? After the ghost-faced cultivator stabilized his body, his eyes trembled, and he was obviously incomparably shocked. He never thought that Nyetian's strength would be so strong. That strike just now had exceeded the limits of a 5th-level false saint martial artist. When the people below saw this scene, they were dumbfounded and they were incomparably shocked. It was hard to believe that Nyetian's sword could actually send the ghost-faced cultivator flying, and it seemed that he was heavily injured. At this moment, Nyetian stood in midair, and his eyes were filled with unconcealable heat. The power of the fifth limit of the starry sky, moonfall, had exceeded his expectations, and it shocked even himself. However, at this moment, Nye Tian suddenly felt a chill coming from behind him, causing his expression to change. His pupils constricted, and the shock in his eyes was self-evident.